But you got to understand, my era of music was the toughest era in hip hop ever. Ever. When I put out songs, I had to go against DMX,
Eminem,
Jay-Z, Eminem, Lil Wayne, 50 Cent, Luda.
Yeah.
All of us are fighting for one spot. So from 99 to like 2008, 10, it's the hardest era ever to get records.
Units in pimp juice and us.
DJ 91.
Hello everyone, this is DJ 91, and right now we are about to do a deep dive into 2000s hip-hop. As a millennial born in the year 1991, this is my personal favorite era of not just hip-hop, but music altogether. I honestly feel so lucky to have been born in time to witness it all. I really enjoyed the 2000s in general as a whole. Since this will be a lengthy video, I'm gonna break this up into 3 chapters: the early 2000s, the mid 2000s, and the late 2000s. Each time period, I will break it down into sections ranking the popularity of rappers by A-list, B-list, C-list, and D-list, which will also include DJs as well, instead of just rappers, for each time period. I've also had the experience of seeing some of these rappers on stage before, live in concert. I'll let you know which ones I've seen as you continue to watch. At the end of each chapter, we'll also go into some other mentions as well. But before we go any further, if you're not subscribed yet, please do me a favor, hit the like button and hit the subscribe button. Just 2 clicks, that's all. It won't cost you a thing. This is YouTube, not OnlyFans. It's free to subscribe and watch videos on here. Now, let's take a trip down memory lane, shall we? Chapter 1, the early 2000s. Starting off with the A-list. And this is in no particular order, by the way. First, we got Nelly, who came out the gate swinging in the year 2000 with the single Country Grammar Hot Shit when he signed his record deal with Universal. The single put him on the map, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. Then his debut album, Country Grammar, was released in the summer. Debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200, selling 235,000 copies the first week, but immediately started selling like crazy. The sales increased and it eventually topped the Billboard 200, selling 2 million copies in less than 2 months. The album would go 5 times platinum by the end of the year, and would ultimately go diamond years later, selling 10 million copies, making Nelly the first and only rapper to have their debut album go diamond. The album was supported by 2 more hit singles, EI and Ride With Me, which were also major hits. 2002, he dropped the Nellyville album. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 715,000 copies. The album went 7 times platinum and had 2 number 1 hits, Hot in Here and Dilemma featuring Kelly Rowland. The third single, Air Force One, nearly topped the Hot 100, reaching number 3. Also on the side, he had his St. Lunatics group. They had their first and only album called Free City, released in between both of Nelly's solo albums at the time. The album went platinum, and outside of music, Nelly did a little acting, had a role in an infamous movie called Snipes, and was an unlockable playable character in the video game NBA Street Volume 2, along with the rest of the St. Lunatics group. Next on the A-list, we got Eminem. He don't do black music, he don't do white music. He makes fight music for high school kids. He puts lives at risk when he draps like this. Wives at... Nah, I'm playing, y'all, just having some fun. Anyways, yeah, ain't trying to do a karaoke rap cover here. Eminem, Marshall Mathers, Slim Shady, who had already made his debut in '99, dropped his second album, the Marshall Mathers LP, in May of 2000. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 1.78 million copies, making him the first rapper to do a million the first week. The album went 7 times platinum by the end of the year. The album also contained hit singles such as The Way I Am, Stan, and The Real Slim Shady, which reached number 4 on the Hot 100. In May 2002, he dropped his third album, The Eminem Show, which also topped the Billboard 200, selling 1.3 million copies the first week, making him pretty much the only rapper to do those numbers twice. The album went 7 times platinum by the end of the year. The first single off the album, Without Me, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. The second single, Cleaning Out My Closet, reached number 4. The next 2 singles, Superman and Sing for the Moment, were top 15 hits. On the side, he also had his own group called D12. They had released an album in between Eminem's solo albums called Devil's Night in 2001, which topped the charts and went platinum. Outside of music, Eminem had a big break in Hollywood as an actor, with a lead role in the movie 8 Mile, which was one of the highest grossing films of 2002. In line with the movie, Eminem executive produced the movie soundtrack. It debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 700,000 copies, and within a few months went quadruple platinum. One of the singles from the soundtrack was Lose Yourself, which topped the Hot 100, making it Eminem's first number 1 hit. Over the years, this would become his signature song. He even got a restaurant called Mom's Spaghetti in Detroit. Next on the A-list, we got Jay-Z. After already establishing himself as a hip-hop superstar in the late 90s, Jay-Z was starting to reach his prime in the early 2000s and was on a streak of #1 albums. Year 2000, he dropped his 5th album, The Dynasty, Rock La Familia, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 557,000 copies and would go double platinum. The album features the well-known club anthem, I Just Wanna Love You, Give It To Me, which was a major hit, reaching #11 on the Hot 100. 2001, he dropped The Blueprint. Fans have ranked this as his second best album behind Reasonable Doubt, which was his first album that dropped in '96. The Blueprint topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 427,000 copies, despite being released on 9/11. The album has since gone triple platinum. The album spawned a couple major hits. Izzo Hova was #8 on the Hot 100, and Girls, Girls, Girls was a top 15 hit. Also, a fun fact about The Blueprint. With the release of this album, he outsold Canadian rock band Nickelback that week, who came in at #2 with the release of their Silver Side Up album, and Nickelback was massively popular in the 2000s. Rarely do you see a rapper outselling a rock band. Anyways, moving on. In 2002, he would follow that up with the sequel, The Blueprint 2, The Gift and the Curse. It was a double album, with disc 1 being The Gift and disc 2 being The Curse. The album sales were also doubled due to it being a multi-disc album. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 545,000 units and would go triple platinum. The first single, 03 Bonnie and Clyde, with his partner in crime Beyonce, was a massive hit, reaching #4 on the Hot 100. The third single, Excuse Me Miss, was a top 10 hit. In 2003, he would drop his 8th album, The Black Album, which was publicized as his farewell to hip-hop, being his last album before retiring. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 463,000 copies and would go triple platinum. The first single, Change Clothes, featuring Pharrell, was a top 10 hit on the Hot 100. The second single, Dirt Off Your Shoulder, was an even bigger hit, reaching #5 on the Hot 100. The third and final single, 99 Problems, was a top 30 hit. Outside of that, Jay-Z also did a collab album with R. Kelly called Best of Both Worlds in 2002. It debuted at #2 on the Billboard charts and went platinum. Jay-Z was also in high demand as a feature. He went on the chart-topping smash hit Crazy in Love with Beyonce, frontin' with Pharrell, which was also a summer '03 jam, and internationally on the memorable Indian hip-hop song Mundiar de Bakke with Punjabi MC, which is Punjabi for Beware of the Boys, which was one of the best crossover collabs in hip-hop history. The Jay-Z feature was able to get Indian hip-hop and Bhangra music heard in the US market and around the world. Next on the A-list, we got 50 Cent. This man literally had the rap game in a chokehold by the time he arrived. Leading up to his come-up, he endured some trials and tribulations. In 2000, he was shot 9 times outside of his grandmother's house, in his hand, arm, legs, hip, chest, and left cheek, but still survived the shooting and has lived to talk about it. However, he had lost his record deal with Columbia. Power of the Dollar, which was supposed to be his first album, ended up being shelved, and he was blacklisted from the industry, which left him unable to record in any studios in the United States. So he had to fly to Canada to record music. Following the move to Canada, he released his first mixtape, Guess Who's Back, in 2002. This mixtape made some noise. Eminem heard the mixtape, flew him out to LA, and signed him to his label, Shady Records, on a $1 million deal through Aftermath and Interscope. Following this, 50 Cent had his breakthrough single called Wangsta, which appeared on the 8 Mile movie soundtrack. The single reached #13 on the Hot 100. This was an introduction of 50 Cent to the mainstream. In February 2003, he released his official debut album, Get Rich or Die Trying, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 872,000 copies. It sold another 800K the following week, staying at #1. It was the biggest selling debut album by a rapper and the best selling album of 2003, going 6 times platinum by the end of the year. Not to mention he just finished a worldwide tour for its 20th anniversary. The first 2 singles, In the Club and 21 Questions, were #1 hits. The third single, PIMP, reached #3. Other than that, he also had his G-Unit group that he formed with Young Buck, Lloyd Banks, and Tony Ayo. They had released their debut album, Beg for Mercy, in December of 2003. The album debuted at #3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 377,000 copies, then moved up to #2 and went double platinum. It spawned a few classic hits, such as Stunt 101, which reached #13 on the Hot 100, Wanna Get to Know You featuring Joe, which reached #15, and Poppin' Them Things, which was a popular street single and was even bigger in Europe. Next on the A-list, we got Ludacris. Got his start in the year 2000 with the release of his debut album, Back for the First Time, which debuted at #4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 133,000 copies and would go triple platinum. Supported by the 2 hit singles, What's Your Fantasy featuring Shauna and Southern Hospitality, which both peaked within the top 30 of the Hot 100. In 2001, he dropped his second album, Word of Mouth. It debuted at #3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 281,000 copies and would go triple platinum in less than a year. The album spawned some major hit singles. Area Codes featuring Nate Dogg reached number 24 on the Hot 100. Roll Out My Business reached number 17. Saturday featuring Sleepy Brown reached number 22. And the road rage anthem Move Bitch was a top 10 hit on the Hot 100. Ludacris has also used his early success to his advantage to help build up his DTP empire. In 2002, he released a compilation album called Golden Grain to showcase the artists who were signed to his label at the time. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 95,000 copies and went gold. In 2003, he dropped his third album, Chicken and Beer, which was not only considered his best work, but also his first number 1 album, topping the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 429,000 copies and would eventually go double platinum. This was Ludacris at his peak. The second single, Stand Up, was Ludacris's first number 1 hit. The fourth single, Splash Waterfalls, reached number 6 on the Hot 100. I also had the experience to see him live for the first time last summer, and he killed it. It was a good time. Next on the list, we got Ja Rule. Despite what some of you might think of Ja Rule, this guy was a force to be reckoned with in the early 2000s. He was dominating back then. Some people have referred to him as Drake before Drake because he was pretty much the first hip-hop artist to make rapping and singing on record sound cool. He had already made his debut in '99 with Vedi Vedi Vici. In 2000, he dropped his second album, Rule 336, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 276,000 copies. The album would go triple platinum. The first 2 singles off the album were major hits. Between Me and You featuring Christina Milian reached number 11 on the Hot 100, and the remix of Put It On Me featuring Lil Mo and Vita reached number 8. In 2001, he was back at it again with his third album, Pain Is Love. This album has been regarded as Ja Rule's best work. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 361,000 copies, which was enough to knock off Jay-Z from the top spot. The album would go triple platinum. The first single, Living It Up, featuring Case, reached number 6 on the Hot 100. The second single, Always on Time, featuring Ashanti, was his first number 1 hit. The third single, Down Ass Chick, featuring Charlie Baltimore, was nearly a top 20 hit. The album also includes the major number 1 hit collab with Jennifer Lopez, I'm Real Murder Remix, making it his second number 1 hit. The two would collab on another hit single called Ain't It Funny Murder Remix, which was also a number 1 hit. In 2002, Ja Rule had more hits for your head top. Off the compilation album, Irv Gotti Presents The Ink spawned the hit single Down For You alongside Ashanti, Charlie Baltimore, and Vita, which reached number 6 on the Hot 100. That year, he also put out his fourth album, The Last Temptation. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 237,000 units and would eventually go platinum. The first single, Thug Lovin', featuring Bobby Brown, was a minor hit, reaching number 42 on the Hot 100. But the second single, Ja Rule delivered on another duet with Ashanti called Mesmerize, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. Then came the 50 Cent bomb, which blew him out the way. Also had Eminem, Lloyd Banks, and the whole G-Unit Aftermath Interscope team going at him. But Ja Rule wasn't going out without a fight. He was willing to go down swinging. In 2003, he dropped his 5th album, Blood in My Eye, which was a response album to 50 Cent, Eminem, and G-Unit. The album was only meant to be a free mixtape due to his contractual obligations with Def Jam of having to release an album every year for 5 years. Blood in My Eye was released commercially and debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 140,000 copies. The album was a flop and failed to reach gold status. The lead single, Clap Back, was a minor hit, reaching number 44 on the Hot 100. Outside of music, he also did some acting. He appeared in a few movies such as Turn It Up, Scary Movie 3, Half Past Dead, and The Fast and the Furious. And yes, we know how he missed out on recurring roles in the film series when he was replaced by Ludacris in the sequel after choosing not to come back for the second movie. It's easy to say now that, oh, he took an L, blah blah, this and that. But picture yourself in Ja Rule's position at the time. If you were in the prime of your rap career, with acting as a side job, what would you choose? $500K to be in a movie, or over $10 million to go on tour? Let's be real, you'd take the $10 million. Don't lie to yourself. Heck, even after his career was destroyed by 50, Ja Rule still got enough hits to keep touring and make money doing shows. I was able to see him live on stage a couple times over the last 2 years. The second time I saw him on stage was with Ashanti last summer, and boy did I feel like a kid again. Something I'll cherish for the rest of my life. Next on the A-list, we got Chingy, another St. Louis native like Nelly. He had made a big splash in 2003 after signing to Ludacris's label Disturbing the Peace. Came out with his debut single Right There, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. This was then followed by the release of his debut album Jackpot, which debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 157,000 copies and would go double platinum. More hits came out of this album. The next single, Holiday Inn, featuring Snoop Dogg and Ludacris, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The third single, One Call Away, was released at the top of the following year, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100. Oh, and we can't forget the Right There remix with Trina and Jermaine Dupri. That was off the chain. I had also seen him live last summer where he opened up for the same festival where Ja Rule and Ludacris performed at. First time seeing him live, he did his thing. It was good to see him performing those old classic joints. Next on the A-list, we got Sean Paul. It would be a disservice of me to leave him off the list just because he's a dancehall artist from Jamaica who rhymes in patois lyrics that everyone else around the world couldn't understand. And for the record, I come from Jamaican parents, so growing up in that culture, I became more familiar with the patois language and could understand most of what Sean Paul was saying in his music. In hip-hop, when you spit, it's called rapping. But in reggae dancehall, when you spit, it's called toasting or DJing, which is usually done in a monotone melody, and like rapping, can also either be pre-written or a freestyle off the top. To furthermore add clarity to this, here's some clips of Sean Paul breaking down the difference between reggae and dancehall and how both genres are hip-hop related.
People ask me what I do, I like to say, reggae dancehall music. They're like, what is that? And I'm like, well, reggae from Bob Marley. They're like, yeah. I'm like, reggae is the father, son is dancehall, and it's a brother to hip-hop.
And as far as his image, instead of going with dreads, he put braids in his hair for more of a hip-hop appeal. And here he was mentioned on the front cover of Vibe magazine as quote-unquote the dancehall don who brings heat from Jamaica and becomes a hip-hop phenomenon. Not only was he on the reggae charts, he was on the pop charts, R&B hip-hop charts, and the rap charts. But of course, Sean Paul in the early 2000s didn't blow up right away. It took some time. In the year 2000, after signing to VP Records with distribution by Universal, he released his first album, Stage 1, which is only enough to make him big in Jamaica, as it made little to no noise worldwide. Deport Them and Hot Gal Today featuring Mr. Vegas were just underground hip-hop bangers in the US market. In 2001, he hopped on a popular dancehall rhythm called The Buzz, which was first released in Jamaica as Gimme the Light. The single was super popular in Jamaica and helped him earn a record deal with Atlantic in 2002. This move would help Sean Paul gain some notoriety in the urban music market as well as some mainstream attention. Gimme the Light was being played everywhere and reached number 7 on the Hot 100. This was then followed by the release of his second album, Dirty Rock, in November. The album was a slow burner at first, debuted at number 26 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 65,000 copies before falling off the charts. But more mega hits came out of it. The second single, Get Busy, was released in January 2003 and topped the charts, making it Sean Paul's first number 1 hit. It topped both the Hot 100 and the R&B hip-hop charts. The third single, Like Glue, was another major hit, reaching number 13 on the Hot 100. The success of these singles helped boost the album sales of Dirty Rock tremendously. It rose back up the charts and peaked within the top 10 of the Billboard 200 and within the top 5 of the R&B hip-hop albums chart. It went from 65K the first week to going double platinum in 10 months. Sean Paul absolutely delivered on making dancehall music more palatable to a hip-hop audience. He was also in high demand as a feature, had another number 1 hit the same year with Beyonce on Baby Boy, which also came with some messy dating rumors at the time between the two, despite Beyonce already being with Jay-Z. They had 03, Bonnie and Clyde, and Crazy in Love to let the world know they was together. But here comes Sean Paul with Baby Boy. But those rumors carried no weight whatsoever, because they did nothing more than just make a song together. I had also seen Sean Paul live in concert a couple summers ago at the History venue in Toronto. This was my first time seeing him live. I had such a fun time. Me and my friends were dancing our asses off. We was going crazy. He came on stage super late, but still did a great job putting on a show. Next on the A-list, we got Shaggy, another Jamaican superstar who can't be left out. He's more than just a reggae singer. He's also considered a rapper as well. He's in the A-list because he was insanely popular in the early 2000s. After blowing up in 95 with Boombastic, he went on a bit of a dry spell. He was dropped by his label, Virgin Records, who gave up on him after seeing him as a one-hit wonder. He then signed with MCA Records, who pretty much gave him the same energy and didn't believe in him. He released an album called Hot Shot in August of 2000, with little to no promotion behind the label and no planned singles. One of the tracks, It Wasn't Me, featuring Rick Rock, was discovered by a Hawaiian DJ by the name of DJ Pablo Sato, who downloaded the album for free off a P2P file sharing website. The track had stood out to him. The song was super catchy with a hip-hop type of beat. DJ Pablo Sato played the song on Hawaiian radio, and within a couple days, it was the number 1 requested song on the station. People kept calling non-stop to play the song. It then spread like wildfire. This popularity prompted MCA Records to release the song commercially, and it exploded worldwide, becoming a global smash hit. It topped the Hot 100 and the rap charts. This started to boost album sales for Hot Shot as it skyrocketed up the charts to number 1 on both the Billboard 200 and the R&B hip-hop albums charts. The album would go 7 times platinum. A next single was released called Angel, featuring Rayvon. This song would be another chart-topping banger, reaching number 1 on the Hot 100. Shaggy became one of the biggest artists in the world during 2000 to 2001, but this popularity was short-lived. In 2002, he dropped his next album, Lucky Day, which only went gold and didn't produce the same big hits that Hot Shot did. Next on the A-list, we got Missy Elliott, who has been highly regarded as the GOAT when it comes to female hip-hop artists. due to her talent, choreography, creative vision, and commercial appeal. And she did it all without having to show any ass or titties for the camera. She had already arrived on the scene in the late 90s with 2 platinum-selling albums, and was looking to continue making history in the new millennium. 2001, she dropped her 3rd album, Missy So Addictive. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 250,000 copies. The album would go platinum. It spawned a couple hit singles, Get Your Freak On, which reached number 7 on the Hot 100, and 1 Minute Man featuring Ludacris and Trina, which reached number 15. In November 2002, she dropped her 4th album, Under Construction, which debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 259,000 copies. It spawned a couple major hit singles. The first single, Work It, reached number 2 on the Hot 100, which also has 50 Cent on the remix. And the second single, Gossip Folks featuring Ludacris, which reached number 8. These singles will help Under Construction go double platinum, which is her best-selling album to date. In 2003, she released her 5th album, This Is Not a Test, which debuted at number 13 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 183,000 copies. The album's 2 singles were somewhat lackluster hits. Past That Dutch reached number 27 on the Hot 100, and I'm Really Hot failed to crack the top 50. But despite this, the album still reached platinum status. Next on the A-list, we got DMX. First off, rest in peace to the dog. It's been 3 years since he left us. He will forever live on, both in spirit and in our hearts. DMX exploded onto the rap scene in the late 90s, making him one of the hottest rappers in the game going into Y2K. The December 99 release of his 3rd album, And Then There Was X, carried over into the year 2000, which had topped the Billboard 200, selling nearly 700,000 copies the first week and going 5 times platinum. The second single off the album, which was the iconic legendary stadium anthem, Party Up, Up in Here, was released in February 2000. This was DMX's biggest hit of his career, reaching number 27 on the Hot 100, and was being played non-stop in the clubs for years to come. In 2001, he dropped his 4th album, The Great Depression. This album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 440,000 copies and would go platinum. 2 of the album's singles charted on the Hot 100. Who We Be reached number 60, and I Miss You featuring Faith Evans reached number 86. Although DMX never made songs for pop radio, that didn't stop him from selling a lot of records. He had a strong core fan base that rocked with him, and his label Def Jam really knew what to do with him. In 2003, he dropped his 5th album, Grand Champ, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 312,000 copies. This was intended to be his last album, as he had just finished his 5-album deal with Def Jam. The album went platinum and spawned the lead single, Where the Hood At, which reached number 68 on the Hot 100. The second single, Get It On the Floor, featuring Swizz Beatz, failed to chart on the Hot 100, but was still a club banger and was fairly popular in Europe and New Zealand. Outside of music, he was already doing some acting. After Belly, he would get more movie roles in upcoming films such as Romeo Must Die, Boricwa's Bond, Exit Wounds, and Cradle to the Grave. He also appeared on the movie soundtrack with the hit single, X Gon' Give It To Ya, which reached number 60 on the Hot 100. Next on the A-list, we got Outkast, Big Boy and Andre 3000, the greatest hip-hop duo of all time, who gave Southern hip-hop an identity. These guys were like the double dragon of hip-hop. Had to throw a video game reference in there since I'm a bit of a gamer myself. They became very popular in the 90s, in an era when it was just East Coast and West Coast dominating. But in the words of Andre 3000,
But it's like this, the South got something to say, that's all I got to say.
yes, they indeed had something to say. They put out classic albums back to back to back, with each of them going platinum at least. But their popularity would reach new heights in the next decade. October 31st, 2000, they released their 4th album, Stankonia. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 530,000 copies, behind Jay-Z and ahead of U2, who came in at number 3. That was a very good week for hip-hop. You have 2 hip-hop acts outselling other genres of music in the same week. The album would go triple platinum in just a few months. The second single, Miss Jackson, became Outkast's first #1 hit, topping the Hot 100. And in the single cover, you can see that Andre 3000 was quite the fashionista, wearing a full dress. So it goes to show that it ain't just the new rappers that's doing it. I'm a big fan of Andre 3000, but not a fan of him wearing a dress. But anyways, moving on. We only talking about the music here. The follow-up single, So Fresh, So Clean, was another banger, which reached number 30 on the Hot 100. In 2001, they dropped a platinum-selling compilation album called Big Boy and Dre Present Outkast, which contained all their previously released singles and a brand new single called The Whole World, which reached number 19 on the Hot 100. In 2003, Outkast would reach their peak with the release of their 5th album, Speakerboxxx The Love Below. The album was released as a double album, with both Big Boy and Andre splitting up doing their own thing on separate albums, as they were going through creative differences. Big Boy did the Speakerboxxx, while Andre did The Love Below. Which was a dope idea creatively and commercially, since the sales would be doubled. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 510,000 copies sold and went 13 times platinum. Both artists were able to score a #1 hit each. Big Boy topped the Hot 100 with The Way You Move featuring Sleepy Brown, and Andre did the same thing with Hey Ya. Both of them were able to collectively score a top 10 hit with the single Roses. Outkast in the early 2000s was on fire. Next on the A-list, we got Mystical. Here I go! One of the No Limit soldiers known for his loud, crazy, and ultra-aggressive vocal delivery, mixed in with his raspy voice, which helped him stand out from everyone else. He had already became popular in the late 90s with 2 platinum-selling albums, but never quite crossed over to the mainstream, until the year 2000. By this time, he had already left No Limit Records and was still signed to Jive Records. He would also switch up his sound and upgrade his beat selection. He went from rapping on mostly garbage beats by in-house producers at the demands of Master P, who forced quantity over quality, to working with the Neptunes, a group of young producers who had vision and knew how to make hits. He released his 4th album, Get Ready, in September of 2000, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 330,000 copies, making it his first #1 album. It would go double platinum. The first single off the album, Shake Your Ass, was his first appearance on the Hot 100 as a lead artist, peaking at number 13. The following single, Danger, featuring Nivea, reached number 14. In 2001, he received his first #1 hit as a feature on the remix version of Stutter with R&B superstar Joe. After this, Mystical wouldn't stay hot for long. In 2001, he dropped his 5th and still most recent album, Tarantula, which peaked at number 25 on the Billboard 200 and only reached gold status. The lead single, Bouncing Back, Bumping Me Against the Wall, was a lackluster hit, reaching number 37 on the Hot 100. His music career got derailed in 2003 after getting into legal trouble for assaulting his hairstylist. He pleaded guilty and was sentenced to 6 years in prison the following year. And that was the last we would ever hear of Mystical in the 2000s. And to wrap up the A-list, we got Diddy. Yes, I know, a now controversial name for obvious reasons, but it wouldn't be right for me to leave him off the list just because. Diddy was definitely one of the big dogs in the early 2000s. Having already established himself as a superstar rapper in the late 90s, he would keep the hits coming. In the early 2000s, he had changed his name from Puff Daddy to P. Diddy. In 2001, he dropped his 3rd album, The Saga Continues, alongside the artists on his label, credited as the Bad Boy Family. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 186,000 copies. The album went platinum. One of the singles, Bad Boy for Life, alongside Mark Curry and Black Rob, reached number 33 on the Hot 100. In 2002, Diddy dropped a remix album called We Invented the Remix. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 256,000 copies and would go platinum. The album featured a couple memorable hit singles that received heavy rotation. I Need a Girl Part 1 featuring Usher and Loon, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. And the sequel, I Need a Girl Part 2 featuring Genuine Loon, Mario Winans, and Tammy Ruggieri, reached number 4 on the Hot 100. Also, Diddy was a go-to for the hip-hop R&B features. He appeared on B2K's Bump 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 in 2002, which topped the Hot 100, and Shake Your Tail Feather in 2003 with Nelly and Murphy Lee, which was also a #1 hit on the charts. Now, on to the B-list. First off, we got Eve, another female hip-hop artist who was very popular in the early 2000s. After having dropped her chart-topping double platinum selling debut album in '99, Eve would continue the momentum. In 2001, she dropped her 2nd album, Scorpion. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 162,000 copies, and would go platinum, thanks to the hit singles. The first single, Who's That Girl, reached number 47 on the Hot 100. The second single, Let Me Blow Your Mind, featuring Gwen Stefani, reached number 2 on the Hot 100, making it her highest charting single at the time. In 2002, Eve would quickly return with another one, dropping her 3rd album, Evolution. The album debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 133,000 copies and went gold. The first single, Gangsta Lovin', featuring Alicia Keys, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. And the second single, Satisfaction, reached number 27. Not gonna lie, back then as a little kid, I was kind of scared of Eve. Loved her music, but her aggressive style and gangsta image made me afraid of her at the time, and I still don't know why. Because she was fine as hell and looked like such a sweetheart. Still looks good to this day as well. She aging like fine wine. Next on the B-list, we got Lil' Kim, aka Queen Bee. Came onto the scene in '96 with her double platinum selling debut album, Hardcore. She would continue to stick around in the early 2000s. She dropped her 2nd album, The Notorious K.I.M., in the summer of 2000. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 229,000 copies. Despite the lackluster hits, the album still went platinum. The first single, No Matter What They Say, reached number 60 on the Hot 100. The second single, How Many Licks, featuring Sisqó, reached number 75. Still went platinum though, but I bet the label was probably like, you need some bigger hits. And Lil' Kim was like, don't worry, I got you. In 2001, she appeared on the #1 hit single, Lady Marmalade, alongside Christina Aguilera, Maya, and Pink. This was a cover version of LaBelle's original hit single from the 70s. This cover was referred to as the Moulin Rouge version. In 2003, Lil' Kim would continue on delivering more hits. she dropped her third album, La Bella Mafia. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 166,000 copies and would go platinum. The first single, The Jump Off, featuring Mr. Cheeks, reached number 17 on the Hot 100. The second single, Magic Stick, featuring 50 Cent, reached number 2 on the Hot 100, despite having no music video, which was an example of the 50 Cent effect. Back in 2003, if you had him on a record, guaranteed it's gonna blow up and get played a million times on the radio. And even though Magic Stick clearly sounded like a street record, it ended up becoming a massive pop record. Anything with 50 on it was an instant crossover banger. How this song came about in the first place was that it was supposed to be on 50's Get Rich or Die Trying album. This song was also supposed to have Trina on it, but she didn't fit the song after recording her verse for it. For a song like this, instead of a southern female voice, you need an East Coast female voice. 50 then sent the song to Lil' Kim, who was late sending her verse back to him before the deadline, but let Lil' Kim have the song for herself to put on her album, and would be the biggest song of her career. Good looking out, 50. Next on the B list, we got Fat Joe. Joe Crack the Don, who in my opinion became the new Biggie of this era. He had already been around since the 90s and had dropped a few albums. He first came onto the scene in 93 with his debut single Flojo, which put him on the map. His career would go on a bit of an upward trajectory since then. Fat Joe was only well known in the urban market and had yet to cross over to the mainstream. The records he was putting out only did well in the streets, but that would all change in the early 2000s. Fat Joe dropped his fourth album, Jealous Ones Still Envy, Jose, in December 2001. The album peaked at number 21 on the Billboard 200 and would go platinum, making it his best-selling album, carried by its two major hit singles. The first single, We Thuggin', featuring R. Kelly, reached number 15 on the Hot 100. And the second single, What's Love, featuring Ashanti and Ja Rule, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. Fat Joe finally had gotten a taste of hip-hop superstardom, but he would fall off a little bit in 2002 with the quick release of his fifth album, Loyalty, which didn't really do well. It had charted at number 31 on the Billboard 200 and failed to even reach gold status. Its two singles were very lackluster and didn't perform well on the charts. Fresh Tonight featuring Genuine only reached number 77 on the Hot 100, and All I Need featuring Tony Sunshine and Armageddon reached number 56. Next on the B list, we got Snoop Dogg. He was already a megastar in the 90s with a few platinum-selling albums, and would continue to sell well in the 2000s. In December of 2000, he dropped his fifth album, The Last Meal. Snoop Dogg explained the meaning behind the title by stating, and I quote, "The reason why I named it The Last Meal is because it's the last time these redneck label executives is going to be eating off Snoop Dogg. And I'm not talking about Master P or No Limit. I'm talking about Priority Records." To furthermore add clarity to this, he was signed to Master P's No Limit Records, who had major label distribution by Priority Records. Snoop Dogg had also just established his new label called Doggy Style Records at the time of the album's release. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 397,000 copies. The album peaked at number 4 a couple weeks later and would quickly go platinum despite its lackluster hits. The first single, Snoop Dogg, What's My Name Part 2, reached number 77 on the Hot 100, and the second single, Lay Low, reached number 50. In 2002, Snoop Dogg had already left No Limit Records and signed a new joint venture deal with Capitol Records through Priority Records. So it looks like Priority was able to get the business right this time. In November of that year, he released his sixth album, Paid the Cost to Be the Boss. It debuted at number 12 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 174,000 copies and would go platinum. The first single, From the Church to the Palace, featuring Pharrell, was able to set the tone for the album. The second single, Beautiful, featuring Pharrell and Uncle Charlie Wilson, was released in January 2003 and reached number 6 on the Hot 100, which was his highest charting single at the time. Outside of that, Snoop Dogg had his own group called the Eastsiders with Trey D and Goldilocks. The group released their first album, Snoop Dogg Presents the Eastsiders, in February 2000. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 100,000 copies and went platinum in 8 months. They would release a second album the following year, Deuces and Trays the Old-Fashioned Way, in July 2001. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 116,000 copies and went gold. Next on the B list, we got Busta Rhymes. Up in the place? Yes, indeed. I catch wreckin', that's word to my seed. Started off in the 90s with 3 platinum-selling albums and gained notoriety for his creative music videos. He would keep things going in the early 2000s. In June of 2000, he released his 4th album, Anarchy. The album was a send-off package to Elektra Records, with it being his last album with the label. But despite this, the album still sold pretty well. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 164,000 copies and would go platinum despite the lack of hits. In 2001, Busta Rhymes signed a new distribution deal with J Records for his label Flip Mode Entertainment, which is now known as the Conglomerate Entertainment. In November of that year, he dropped his 5th album, Genesis. The album debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 185,000 copies and would go platinum. This album would produce more hits for Busta. The first single, What It Is, featuring Khalees, reached number 63 on the Hot 100. The next tongue-twisting and fast-rapping hit single, Break Your Neck, reached number 26 on the Hot 100. And the final single, the remix of Pasta Cavassier, which was simply named Part 2, featuring Diddy and Pharrell, reached number 11 on the Hot 100. In November 2002, Busta Rhymes released his sixth album, It Ain't Safe No More. It peaked at number 43 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. The remix of Make It Clap featuring Spliff Star and Sean Paul was the first single, which reached number 46 on the Hot 100. And the second single, I Know What You Want, featuring Mariah Carey, reached number 3 on the Hot 100, which was one of the biggest songs of his career. Next up, we got Fabolous, Fabolous, Loso in case you ain't know so. First came onto the scene in 2001. His introduction to the mainstream was being featured on the remix of R&B singer Lil Mo's Superwoman, which was released as Superwoman Part 2. The song was a major hit on the charts, reaching number 11 on the Hot 100. Fabolous then dropped his debut album Ghetto Fabulous later that year on 9/11, the same day Hove dropped his album. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 143,000 copies and went gold in a month. The first single, Can't Deny It, featuring Nate Dogg, reached number 25 on the Hot 100. And the second single, Youngin' Holla Back, reached number 33. In a couple years, Ghetto Fabulous reached platinum status as the rapper's popularity kept growing. In 2003, Fab would keep the hits coming. He dropped his second album, Street Dreams, in March. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 185,000 copies and went platinum in 6 months. This was his most commercially successful album as it produced some of the biggest songs of his career. The first single, Can't Let You Go, featuring Lil Mo and Mike Shorey, reached number 4 on the Hot 100. The second single, Into You, also reached number 4 on the Hot 100. The song had 2 different versions. The album version featured Ashanti, and another version that featured Tamia, which was used for the music video. The Street Dreams album also contained another hit single as a bonus track, Traded All Part 2, featuring Jagged Edge and P. Diddy, which had been released the year before, peaking at number 20 on the Hot 100. Also in 2003, Fabolous had released a commercial mixtape called More Street Dreams Part 2, the mixtape, which peaked at number 28 on the Billboard 200. Next up, we got Lil Bow Wow. Before we get into Lil Bow Wow, I'm gonna say this straight up and down. When it comes to teenage rappers, this guy is the GOAT, and it's no debate. No rapper before or after him had a better run in their adolescent years like he did. Can't tell me otherwise. Now let's continue with the content. Started off in the 90s as a child rapper, appearing on Arsenio Hall in 93 with a live performance as a 6-year-old, and after years of grinding, he met Jermaine Dupri and signed to his label So So Def. Lil Bow Wow dropped his first album, Beware of the Dog, in 2000 at the age of 13. The album debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 101,000 copies and went double platinum 6 months later. The first single, Bounce With Me, featuring Escape, reached number 20 on the Hot 100. The second single, Bow Wow, That's My Name, featuring Snoop Dogg, reached number 21 on the Hot 100. In December 2001, he dropped his second album, Doggy Bag. The album debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 320,000 copies. The album's 2 singles didn't really perform that well on the charts. Thank You, featuring Jagged Edge and Jermaine Dupri, reached number 93 on the Hot 100. And Take You Home reached number 72. Despite this, the album still went platinum. In August 2003, Lil Bow Wow dropped his third album, Unleashed. By this time, he had changed his name to Bow Wow after dropping the Lil from his name, as he finally became old enough to drive since he had just turned 16 at the time. Unleashed debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 120,000 copies and went gold. The first single, Let's Get Down, reached number 14 on the Hot 100. The second single, My Baby, featuring Jagged Edge, reached number 42 on the Hot 100. Outside of music during this time period, Bow Wow also had some acting gigs, appearing in a few movies such as Carmen, a hip opera, All About the Benjamins, and a lead role in the classic sports comedy film Like Mike, alongside Morris Chestnut. Next up, we got Nas. The reason why I put him on the B-list is because his popularity was on a bit of a decline since it had already reached its peak in the 90s. If this was a deep dive into 90s hip-hop, I would for sure put Nas on the A-list, more so from the mid to late 90s. In 94, he dropped Illmatic, that had went gold. 96 dropped It Was Written, a number 1 album that went double platinum. 99 dropped I Am, number 1 goes double platinum. And Nostradamus the same year, number 7 went platinum. But in the new millennium, the Escobar season kept coming. In the early 2000s, Nas would end up flooding the market, putting out a lot of music. Starting in 2000, he formed a new label called Ill Will Records as an imprint label of Columbia Records, and released a compilation project in November called Nas and Ill Will Records presents QB's Finest, which went gold. The album spawned the hit single Uchi Wally with the Bravehearts, which reached number 26 on the Hot 100. In December 2001, Nas then dropped his 5th album, Stillmatic, which was a spin-off of his 1994 debut album, Illmatic. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 343,000 copies, then peaked at number 5 and quickly went platinum in less than a month. The album received a lot of hype due to his feud with Jay-Z. After Jay-Z strike first with Takeover on the Blueprint, Nas responded with Ether, which was track number 2 on Stillmatic. It has been highly regarded as one of the greatest, if not the greatest diss track of all time. The way Nas snapped back at Jay-Z on Ether was enough to convince hip-hop fans that Nas won the battle. Other than that, Stillmatic had some nice street singles as well as some bangers. One of the singles, One Mic, reached number 43 on the Hot 100. In September 2002, Nas dropped The Lost Tapes, which is a compilation of old unreleased tracks. It debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 70,000 copies. The compilation was also well received by the critics. Later that year in December, Nas dropped his sixth album, Godson. The album debuted at number 18 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 156,000 copies, then peaked at number 12 and went platinum in a month. The first single, Made You Look, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The second single, I Can, was the biggest song of his career, reaching number 12 on the Hot 100. I got to see him live for the first time back in 2019 during his tour with Mary J. Blige. It was a great experience, and I have plans of seeing him again very soon in the near future. Next on the list, we got Cam'ron, aka Killer Cam, who has one of the most iconic hip-hop photos of all time, where he rocked the all-pink fur jacket with the pink flip phone in his hand at the 2003 Grammys. What a fashion statement that was indeed. But anyways, let's get into the music. He had already made his debut in '98 with the gold-selling album, Confessions of Fire. But the second album he dropped in 2000, called SDE, was a flop. It failed to reach gold status after debuting at number 14 on the Billboard 200, selling 73,000 copies the first week. The album failed to produce any major hits. The singles were easily forgettable. The first single, Let Me Know, only reached number 99 on the Hot 100. And the second single, What Means the World to You, reached number 83. These results left Cam'ron unhappy with his situation. At the time, he was signed to Epic Records and had demanded to be released from the label. He was able to break free from them and take matters into his own hands to better his career. In 2001, both him and fellow Harlem rapper Jim Jones co-founded Diplomat Records, which was followed up by a $4.5 million joint venture deal with Jay-Z and Dame Dash's Rockefeller Records. This move would be a good move for Cam'ron, not just financially, but professionally as well. In 2002, he dropped his third album, Come Home With Me. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 226,000 copies and would go platinum, making it the best-selling album of his career. The album produced a couple unforgettable major hits. The first single, Oh Boy, featuring Joel Santana, reached number 4 on the Hot 100. The second single, Hey Ma, which also featured Joel's, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. Outside of his solo work, Cam'ron also formed a hip-hop collective group called The Diplomats, who we all know as Dipset. In the Dipset lineup, you have Cam, Juelz, Jim Jones, and Freaky Zeke. Cam'ron was the star of the group, while two of the latter three were up-and-coming names in the rap scene. The four-band group released their first album, Diplomatic Immunity, in 2003. The album debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 92,000 copies and went gold. Although the album contained no pop hits, it cemented their legacy as one of the most legendary, iconic groups in hip-hop history. Both singles, Built This City and Dipset Anthem, only did well in the streets, but over time they have aged gracefully as hip-hop classics. Not just their music, but their outfits were top-notch as well. They also had a clothing line with that iconic logo that had the spread-out eagle with the American flag-colored feathers stamped on the apparel, which is still in demand to this day. Also, can't forget that classic live interview that Cam did with Bill O'Reilly in 2003. Next up, we got Exhibit, X to the Z. Started off in the mid-90s, his first album dropped in 96, and his second album dropped in 98. Already had a huge underground following, but hadn't quite reached any commercial success at the time. Until the year 2000, when he dropped his third album, Restless. By this time, he had switched labels, going from RCA Records to Epic Records. They knew what to do with Exhibit in order to help him reach a wider audience that was into his style of rap. Restless debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 205,000 copies, peaked at number 12, and went platinum, making it the best-selling album of his career. This was Exhibit at his peak. The first single, X, reached number 76 on the Hot 100, which was the only single to appear on the chart. The second single, Front to Back, and the third single, Get Your Walk On, were just street singles. But like DMX, this proved that Exhibit didn't need pop records to sell well because he was in the right situation. In 2002, he dropped his fourth album, Man vs. Machine. I think the album cover is horrible, by the way. What kind of Photoshop was that? And what's with the gas mask plastered on there? Really? Anyways, just wanted to roast the album cover. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 156,000 copies and went gold. Another rough and rugged hip-hop record that contains street bangers such as Multiply featuring Nate Dogg and Symphony and X Major featuring Dr. Dre. Next up, we got Trick Daddy. Definitely gotta put him on the B-list for this one. I personally believe his popularity in the early 2000s was underrated. He already started off in the late 90s with 2 albums and would reach his prime during this time period. In 2000, he dropped his third album, Book of Thugs, Chapter AK Verse 47, which peaked at number 26 on the Billboard 200 and went gold without a crossover hit single. In 2001, Trick Daddy would start to make some radio-friendly songs that would help him sell more records. He released his fourth album, Thugs R Us, which debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 116,000 copies and went platinum, making it his best-selling album, thanks to some hits. The first single, Take It to the House, featuring Trina and the SNS Express, reached number 50 on the Hot 100. The second single, I'm a Thug, reached number 17 on the Hot 100, making it his highest charting single at the time. In 2002, he dropped his fifth album, Thug Holiday. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 130,000 copies and went gold, even with lower performing singles. The first single, In the Wind, featuring CeeLo Green and Big Boy, reached number 70 on the Hot 100. The second single, Thug Holiday, featuring Escape member Latasha Scott, reached number 87. Next up, we got Big Timers, the Cash Money duo that consists of Birdman and Manny Fresh. Started off in the late 90s in the underground and would blow up in the early 2000s, achieving mainstream success. In 2000, they released their third album, I Got That Work. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 187,000 copies and went platinum. The album contained a couple street bangers. The first single, Get Your Roll On, and the second single, Number One Stunner, featuring Juvenile and Lil Wayne, both reached number 24 on the R&B hip-hop chart. In 2002, Big Timers reached their peak with their fourth album, Hood Rich, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 168,000 copies and went platinum. The first single, Stay Fly, reached number 11 on the Hot 100, making it their highest charting single. The second single, Oh Yeah, featuring Tatis, Boo and Gotti, reached number 46. In 2003, they dropped their final album, Big Money Heavyweight. It debuted at number 21 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 116,000 copies and went gold. The first single, This Is How We Do, reached number 97 on the Hot 100. And the second single, Gangsta Girl, featuring R. Kelly, reached number 85. Next on the B list, we got Lil Jon. Yeah! Good thing I really took my time with this video project because I almost forgot to include him. Lil Jon had his start in the late 90s and would blow up in the early 2000s. And as talented as he was, he had a bit of help. He joined forces with a couple other Atlanta rappers by the name of Big Sam and Lil Bo to form the rap group The East Side Boys, but then would be renamed Lil Jon and the East Side Boys for better marketability. Basically, how the group functioned was that you had Lil Jon as the frontman who does the rapping and producing, while the East Side Boys are in the background as hype man who will also do ad-libs on the tracks. So in NBA terms, Lil Jon was the superstar point guard who averaged a double-double, while the East Side Boys were two big men who locked down the paint and crashed the boards. Teamwork makes the dream work. In 2000, they independently released their second album, We Still Crunk. Although it never really made any noise, this was enough to get them some offers. They partnered with the now inactive TVT Records, which was a major independent label. They released their third album, Put Yo Hood Up, in 2001. They would finally start to make some noise with this album. It peaked at number 43 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. The lead single, Bia Bia, featuring Ludacris, Too Short, and China White, was their first Hot 100 appearance, peaking at number 94. Over the next 2 years, Lil Jon and the East Side Boys would make even bigger noise. In October 2002, they released their fourth album, Kings of Crunk, which was a slow burner at first, debuting at number 15 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 71,000 copies. The first two singles, Play No Games and I Don't Give a Fuck, didn't do a thing. But that was clearly a chess move, as they were saving the hot single for last. In February 2003, the third single, Get Low, featuring the Yin Yang Twins, was released and became one of the biggest songs of the year, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100. It was a big-time party anthem. The hypeness of the crunk beat, the unforgettable hook, down ski 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 ski. It was out of here. This boosted the album sales for Kings of Crunk exponentially. The album climbed back up the charts, peaking at number 14. The album went from 71K the first week to going platinum in 11 months. At this point, the crunk music era was starting to take over, thanks to Lil Jon, the man who started it all. Next on the B list, we got LL Cool J. Looking back, it's kinda crazy how a rapper who became a star in the 80s still be relevant enough in the 2000s, but the ladies still loved LL, hence why the LL in his name stand for Ladies Love. And his overall fan base was still rocking with him. He was able to age gracefully and adapt with the times. He was still marketable and still signed to Def Jam. In 2000, he dropped his 8th album called GOAT, the greatest of all time. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 208,000 copies. This was his first ever #1 album. It would reach gold status. The album was a success despite being a more lyrical-driven album with no pop singles. The first single, Imagine That, featuring LaShawn, only reached number 98 on the Hot 100. And the second single, You and Me, featuring Kelly Price, failed to chart on the Hot 100, but was well received on Urban Airplay. In 2002, LL Cool J would dumb it down again and get back to the hits. Can the 34-year-old rapper still do it? Are his hit-making days over and done with? No, it's not. He dropped his 9th album called 10 in October of 2002. The reason behind the title was that this was his 10th album that he had put out with Def Jam, making him the first ever artist to do so with the same label. One of the previous albums he had put out was a greatest hits album, so 10 is really his 10th album overall, but it's actually his 9th studio album. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 154,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Love You Better, reached number 4 on the Hot 100, which was his highest charting single since 1996. The second single, Paradise, featuring A. Marie, reached number 36 on the Hot 100. Also, he would have the biggest collab of his career with Jennifer Lopez as a feature on All I Have, which topped the Hot 100, making it LL's first ever #1 hit. And to wrap up the B-list, we got Juvenile. Juve! Taking over for the 99 and the 2000. Juvenile's popularity started in the late 90s with the 400 Degrees album, the hit single Back That Ass Up, and from being in the Hot Boys group. He was just getting started. In August 2001, he dropped his 5th album, Project English, which debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 213,000 copies and went gold. The album featured a couple minor hits. The first single, Set It Off, reached number 65 on the Hot 100. And the second single, from her mama, Mama Got Ass, also did the same. In December 2003, he dropped his 6th album, Juvie the Great. The album debuted at number 32 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 100,000 copies. The first single, In My Life, featuring Manny Fresh, reached number 46 on the Hot 100. The second single, Slow Motion, featuring the late Soulja Slim, was released in March of the following year. It topped the Hot 100, making it Juvenile's first ever #1 hit. Despite its chart performance, the song doesn't get talked about nearly enough as much as his 1999 hit single Back That Ass Up, which had reached number 19. Back That Ass Up would still be chosen as Juvenile's signature song by the public. The success of Slow Motion helped boost the album sales for Juvie the Great. Rising back up the charts, peaking at number 28 on the Billboard 200, it would eventually go platinum. Now for the C-list. First up, we got Yin Yang Twins. Remember them boys who made you want to whistle while you twerk? No pun intended on that one, really, because that was the name of their debut single, which dropped in the year 2000. It was their first time making a bit of a splash in the hip-hop scene. The single peaked at number 74 on the Hot 100. This would be the lead single off their debut album, Thug Walkin', released in April of 2000, which was a month after the single dropped. The album didn't really sell well at all and failed to chart on the Billboard 200. Because of this commercial failure, they were dropped from their label. They were signed to Universal Records at the time, but it didn't end up being the right situation for them. However, they would still get offers from other labels out there in free agency. One of the A&R representatives at TVT Records was interested in signing the duo, but a deal wasn't done in time for their second album. They ended up signing a deal with Koch Records instead and dropped their second album, Ali, The Return of the Yin Yang Twins, in March 2002. The album would do better than their debut album, appearing on the Billboard 200, debuting at number 79, and peaked at number 58. The album nearly went gold, selling 400,000 copies in the US. The lead single, Say Ay Ay Ay, reached number 56 on the Hot 100, which was an improvement. Slowly but surely, the Yin Yang Twins' popularity was growing. In 2003, they was recruited to be featured on Lil Jon's huge club banger, Get Low, which nearly topped the charts. Following this, Yin Yang Twins would finally end up signing that deal with TVT Records. In September of 2003, they dropped their third album, Me and My Brother. It debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 62,000 copies and went gold in a few months. The first single, Naggin', set the tone, reaching number 87 on the Hot 100. The second single, Salt Shaker, featuring Lil Jon and the East Side Boys, became their biggest single to date, reaching number 9 on the Hot 100. The third single, What's Happening, featuring Trick Daddy, was another big hit, reaching number 30 on the Hot 100. The Yin Yang Twins were on their way up. Next up, we got Clips, the Virginia duo that consists of Pusha T and Malice, who now goes by No Malice. They had signed a record deal in '96 with Elektra Records, thanks to some assistance by the Neptunes. Their first album, Exclusive Audio Footage, was slated to be released in '99, but was shelved after it failed to produce any hits, when the first single, The Funeral, failed to catch any fire. But things would turn out better for Clips in the early 2000s. They had signed with the Neptunes' new imprint label, Star Trek Entertainment, under Arista Records. Clips would go back to work in order to finally get their elusive debut album released to the world, which they would finally accomplish in 2002 with Lord Willin'. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 122,000 copies and went gold in 2 months. The album contained quite a few bangers. The first single, Grindin', reached number 30 on the Hot 100. To this day, the instrumental for that song has been regarded as one of the best hip-hop instrumentals of all time, due to its percussive drum and woodblock arrangement. If you was in school at the time when this dropped, you and your friends would bang on the cafeteria tables to this one. The second single, When the Last Time, ended up being their biggest song, reaching number 19 on the Hot 100. The third single, My I Don't Love Her, featuring Faith Evans, reached number 86. Outside of this, they was featured on a couple other hits. One with Justin Timberlake on his debut solo single, Like I Love You, which reached number 11 on the Hot 100, and on Birdman's What Happened to That Boy. Next on the C-list, we got Lil Romeo, the son of Master P. He would follow in his father's footsteps of becoming a rapper, also following in the footsteps of Lil Bow Wow of being a popping teen rapper. But in this case, Romeo was a preteen. In 2001, he dropped his self-titled album at the age of 12. By this time, he was added to the roster of his father's No Limit Records label. The album debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 99,000 copies and went gold, thanks to his debut single, My Baby, which was also the lead single off the album. It reached number 3 on the Hot 100. In 2002, he was unable to repeat the same success he had the year before with the release of his second album, Game Time, which peaked at number 33 on the Billboard 200. It failed to reach gold status or produce any hits. The lead single, Two Way, featuring Master P and Silk the Shocker, didn't make it on the Hot 100. But hey, the Lil Romeo hype was fun while it lasted. Next on the C list, we got 3-6 Mafia. Around this time, the group consisted of DJ Paul, Juicy J, Crunchy Black, Gangsta Boo, Koopsta Nika, and Lord Infamous. They rose to popularity in the late 90s and would continue to make noise in the 2000s. They dropped their fourth album, When the Smoke Clears, 6661, in June 2000. As you can see on the album cover that one of the 6 members were missing. Koopsta got in trouble with the law. He was arrested and charged with domestic violence assault and aggravated burglary. And as a result of this, he was kicked out of the group because he just couldn't stay out of trouble, leaving the group down to 5 members. When the Smoke Clears debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 and went platinum by the end of the year. Despite the lack of hits, it sold well based on the strength of its street singles, Who Run It and Sippin' on Some Scissor featuring UGK and Project Pat. And for the record, you don't want to be sipping on no scissor. That's that lean, which is a drug that's not good for you. Do not drink lean. Anyways, back to 3-6 Mafia. In 2001, they dropped their 5th album, Choices the Album, which was the soundtrack for a movie of the same name. By this time, the group was now down to 4 members as Gangsta Boo left to embark on a solo career. But this didn't slow down the group. They proceeded to drop their 6th album, The Unbreakables, in 2003. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. Again, no pop singles needed. Just Riding Spinners featuring Lil Flip, which was a street single. Next up, we got Da Brat, one of the So Def representatives. She made history in the 90s as the first solo female rapper to have a platinum-selling album. She would continue to stay relevant in the early 2000s. In April 2000, she dropped her 3rd album, Unrestricted. At this point, Da Brat would switch up her style from a tomboy image to a more sexy look. She used to cover up, but now would start showing some skin. The Unrestricted album debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200, went gold the following month, and went platinum the following year. The first single, That's What I'm Looking For, reached number 56 on the Hot 100, and was featured on the soundtrack for Big Mama's House. The second single, What You Like, featuring Tyrese, reached number 26 on the Hot 100. In 2001, she hopped on the remix of Jagged Edge's major hit single, Where the Party At, along with JD, Bow Wow, ROC, and Tyga. After this, her popularity would start to regress. In July 2003, she would drop her 4th and most recent album, Limelight, Love, and Nightclubs. The album debuted at number 17 on the Billboard 200 and didn't reach gold status. The first and only hit single off the album, In Love With You featuring Cherish, reached number 44 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got The Lox, the 3-headed monster from Yonkers, New York that consists of Jadakiss, Styles P, and Sheek Louch. They bursted onto the scene in the late 90s with their platinum-selling debut album, Money, Power, Respect. But despite the success, the group was unhappy with their situation. Being signed to Diddy's label, Bad Boy Records, they disliked the way they was being marketed, in shiny suits and sunglasses, and disliked the pop style of music that they was being required to conform to. Although the group wanted out of Bad Boy Records, they had no legal leverage whatsoever, but they were still able to force their way out of their contract thanks to the help of the fans with the Let the Lox Go campaign, and signed a new record deal with Rough Riders Entertainment. In January 2000, they dropped their 2nd album, We Are the Streets. For this album, they had more creative control and got back to their street roots. Although it was less successful than the first album, it was something the group was proud of and got better reviews from the critics. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. The lead single, Ride or Die Chick, featuring Timbaland and Eve, reached number 73 on the Hot 100. After this, the group would venture off and do solo albums, but still remain tight as a group. Next on the C list, we got Jadakiss, 1/3 of the Lox, of course, top 5 Dead or Alive, and also arguably has the most legendary laugh in hip-hop history. He dropped his debut album, Kiss the Game Goodbye, in 2001. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 204,000 copies and went gold. No pop single was needed for this album to do well, since Jadakiss already had enough hype from the fans and support from the label to give him that push. The first single, We Gonna Make It, featuring Styles P, didn't chart on the Hot 100, but over the years has been regarded as a hip-hop classic with one of the hardest instrumentals ever produced, thanks to The Alchemist. Also, the chemistry of Jadakiss and Styles P going back and forth with each other every 2 to 3 bars is a chemistry like no other that can't be duplicated. The second single, Knock Yourself Out, produced by the Neptunes, was another hot single for the streets. But We Gonna Make It got Jadakiss and Styles P enough notoriety to be featured on a song with Jennifer Lopez for her hit single, Jenny from the Block, which reached number 3 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Styles P, another member of the Lox, also known as The Ghost, released his debut album in 2002 called A Gangster and a Gentleman. The album debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 135,000 copies and went gold, thanks to the success of the weed-smoking anthem, Good Times, which reached number 22 on the Hot 100. Notable for the Fred Payne sample on the hook from a song called I Get High on Your Memory. Shout out to Swizz Beatz for producing that one. Next on the C list, we got T.I., aka Tip, aka Mr. Rubber Band Man, wild as the Taliban. Reason why I have him on the C list is because he was still in the underground in the early 2000s before achieving any kind of mainstream recognition. In 2001, he dropped his debut album, I'm Serious, with Arista Records. The album was a commercial failure, peaking at number 98 on the Billboard 200. The lead single of the same name featuring Beanie Man didn't really do anything. T.I. was then dropped from his label, but he would quickly bounce back. In 2003, both him and his manager, Jason Jeter, started up a new independent label called Grand Hustle Entertainment. He would then sign a joint venture deal with Atlantic Records. In August 2003, he released his second album, Trap Music. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 110,000 copies and went gold in 4 months. The album had 4 singles released. The first single, 24s, was his first Hot 100 entry as a lead artist, peaking at number 78. The second single, Be Easy, was a street single. The third single, Rubber Band Man, reached number 30 on the Hot 100. And the fourth single, Let's Get Away, featuring Jazzy Faye, reached number 35 on the Hot 100. It was at this time when T.I. finally arrived and started to make a name for himself. I had also seen T.I. live for the first time last summer. He was in the same lineup as Ja Rule, Chingy, and Ludacris. He shut it down and killed it. Next up, we got Lil Flip, who was also one of T.I.'s rivals at the time. Having already sold a lot of records on his own out of the trunk of his car throughout the city of Houston, Texas, where he's from. Lil Flip came into the game as an independent artist. He had dropped his first album, The Leprechaun, in 2000 independently, and was able to sell 200,000 copies. He would get offers from major labels and would ultimately sign with Columbia Records. He would then drop his second album, Underground Legend, in August 2002, which debuted at number 12 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 70,000 copies and went platinum in 4 months with no hits. The lead single, The Way We Ball, was only a street single, which peaked at number 69 on the R&B hip-hop chart. The results only proved that Lil Flip can sell well, both independently and commercially without a hit. Next up, we got DJ Clue. If I'm not mistaken, who was really one of the first, if not the first ever DJ to do it big, going from hosting a radio show and putting out mixtapes, to starting up his own label, signing up a joint venture deal with Rockefeller Def Jam, putting out studio albums and singles the same way rappers did, where he'd recruit all the big names in urban music and put them on a project. In 2001, he dropped his second album, The Professional 2, which was a sequel to his 1998 platinum-selling debut album. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 239,000 copies and went gold, even without a pop single. The Rockefeller Def Jam machine really pushed DJ Clue to the masses. The album's only single, Back to Life 2001, featuring Jadakiss and Mary J. Blige, did well in the street market, reaching number 57 on the R&B hip-hop chart. Next up, we got Bubba Sparxxx. That's right, Eminem wasn't the only white rapper popping back then. Not to mention, both of them were actually label mates at Interscope Records. Bubba Sparxxx released his debut album, Dark Days, Bright Nights, in 2001. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 132,000 copies and went gold in less than 2 months, thanks to the strength of the smash hit lead single, Ugly, which was produced by Timbaland. It reached number 15 on the Hot 100. In 2003, Bubba Sparxxx would be back at it again with the release of his second album, Deliverance. This album wouldn't do as well as the first one. It debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 64,000 copies and failed to reach gold status. Also, none of the singles didn't really make an impact. The notable title track featuring Timbaland, which was the second single off the album, failed to chart on the Hot 100, but did moderately well in Europe. Despite the commercial flop, this album was very well received by the critics. He showed growth on this album, and the production was way more diverse this time around. Deliverance was definitely one of the most underrated hip-hop albums of 2003. Next on the C list, we got Lil Wayne. Back in the early 2000s, he was a young teenage rap sensation who had just started to blow up. Following the release of his 1999 platinum-selling debut album, he dropped his second album, Lights Out, in December 2000. It debuted at number 24 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 205,000 copies, peaked at number 16, and went gold. Only one of the 3 singles off the album, Shine featuring Juvenile and Manny Fresh, charted on the Hot 100, reaching number 96. Although Lil Wayne wasn't quite the hit-making rapper at the time, he didn't really need any big hits in order to go gold or platinum. In 2002, he dropped his third album, 500 Degrees. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 141,000 copies and went gold. The first single, Way of Life, featuring Big Timers and TQ, reached number 72 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Ice Cube. By this time, Ice Cube was a rap veteran who had also become a big-time actor in Hollywood. I put him on the C list because he was no longer as big as he was in the 90s. Talking rap, not movies. Although his days of going platinum were over, he was still relevant. In 2000, he dropped his 6th album, War and Peace Volume 2, The Peace Disc, which was a sequel to his previous album, with Volume 1 being the War Disc. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 185,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, You Can Do It, featuring Mac 10 and Miss Toy, reached number 35 on the Hot 100. He was also part of the supergroup West Side Connection with Mac 10 and WC. After a 7-year hiatus, the group returned in 2003 with their second and final album, Terrorist Threats. It debuted at number 16 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 136,000 copies and went gold. The album's lead single, Gangsta Nation, featuring Nate Dogg, reached number 33 on the Hot 100. And as for movies, he appeared in Next Friday, Friday After Next, Barbershop, Ghost of Mars, and All About the Benjamins. Next up, we got Murphy Lee, one of the members from the Saint Lunatics. He was able to branch off on his own a little bit. In 2003, he was featured on the chart-topping hit single Shake Your Tail Feather alongside Nelly and Diddy for the Bad Boys 2 soundtrack. Following this, he would then release his debut solo album, Murphy's Law. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 135,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, What the Hook Gon' Be, featuring Jermaine Dupri, reached number 17 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Nori, who we now know as one of the co-hosts of the Drink Champs podcast. Before his podcasting career, Nori was a fairly popular rapper back then. He started off in the late 90s as one half of the duo Capone and Noriega, and also had a poppin' solo career outside of that, with his first 2 albums going gold. In 2002, he dropped his 3rd album, God's Favorite, after signing a new record deal with Def Jam. The album debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 118,000 copies. Although the album never went gold, it contained the biggest song of his career. The 3rd single, Nothing, featuring Pharrell, reached number 10 on the Hot 100. 20 years after the song was released, it was listed on one of the top 50 best songs of 2002 by Spin Magazine. Next up, we got Baby Bash, another rapper of Latino descent who also made a name for himself during this era. Born in California, Baby Bash actually wanted to play basketball and make it to the league. He played college ball at Solano Community College, but suffered an ankle injury that would put an end to his hoop dreams. Then he decided to chase music and had moved to Houston, Texas to pursue a music career. Luckily, music would end up working out for him. Before Baby Bash made it big, he started off as Baby Beesh. While signed to an independent label by the name of Dope House Records in Houston, Texas, he put out his first 2 albums, Savage Dreams and On the Cool, in 2001 and 2002. He was making some noise in the underground with those releases, which caught the attention of Universal Records, who signed him in 2003. He would then change his name from Baby Beesh to Baby Bash, which sounded better because Baby Beesh, come on, that don't sound marketable at all. Baby Bash is a better fit. In September of that year, with the new label, he dropped his 3rd album, The Smokin' Nephew. It debuted at number 48 on the Billboard 200 and went gold in a few months. The first single, Shorty Doo Wop, bubbled under the Hot 100 chart and received a lot of Houston airplay to help boost his local reach. But the second single, Sugar Sugar, featuring Frankie J, would end up being the biggest song of his career. It reached number 7 on the Hot 100 and also charted worldwide, becoming a massive global hit. It was outta here. Next on the C list, we got Loon, a forgotten name in the hip-hop community. While signed to Bad Boy Records, he received some popularity in the early 2000s. More so as a featured artist who appeared on some big songs such as Diddy's I Need a Girl Part 1 and Part 2, which were both top 5 hits on the Hot 100. Loon dropped his self-titled debut album in 2003. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 80,000 copies. The lead single, Down For Me, featuring Mario Winans, reached number 24 on the Hot 100, which was his highest charting single as a lead artist. Next up, we got Shine, another rapper who was also signed to Bad Boy Records, who bursted onto the scene in the early 2000s. He dropped his self-titled debut album in September 2000. Despite being incarcerated at the time for a nightclub shooting, the album still did well. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 160,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Bad Boys, featuring Barrington Levy, was a hit record, peaking at number 57 on the Hot 100 and in the top 10 on the R&B hip-hop chart. Next up, we got Youngbloods, a duo from Atlanta that consists of J-Bo and Sean Paul, who later had to shorten his name to Sean P since there was another Sean Paul out there who had the name. The Youngbloods started off in the late 90s and would slowly reach their peak in the early 2000s. They was first signed to LaFace Records, then switched to So So Def in 2002. Both labels had major label distribution through Arista Records. They began work on their second album, which took a long time to finish because after all the recording they did for the album, they felt like they still didn't have a hit single. The first single, Cadillac Pimpin', didn't really do anything, and they would go back to the drawing board. They would hit up Lil Jon for assistance, who would produce the second single, Damn, which was a game changer. Released in the summer of 2003, it was a massive club-banging mainstream hit, reaching number 4 on the Hot 100. Youngblood's second album would finally see the light of day. Dragon Partners was released in August 2003, debuting at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 85,000 copies and went gold in 3 months. Next up, we got Bone Thugs and Harmony. This group from Cleveland, Ohio is one of the most influential hip-hop groups of all time, known for their ultra-fast melodic style of rapping and also the pioneering of the triplet flow, which has been recycled through the Migos. Bone Thugs and Harmony dominated the 90s with a few multi-platinum selling albums and a bag full of hits. In the early 2000s, they were still fairly popular. In the year 2000, they dropped their fourth album, BTNH Resurrection. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 280,000 copies and went platinum in a month, without any hit singles. Following this, their popularity would start to decline. In 2002, they dropped their fifth album, Thug World Order. It debuted at number 12 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 82,000 copies, but it failed to even reach gold status. The only memorable single was Home featuring Phil Collins. Although it didn't chart on the Hot 100, it did pretty well in Europe, due to its heavy sample of Phil Collins' classic hit, Take Me Home. Next up, we got Mobb Deep, Havoc and Prodigy, one of the most legendary hip-hop duos of all time. They were popular in the mid to late 90s, dropping classic after classic after classic. In the early 2000s, they would still maintain their popularity. In 2001, they dropped their fifth album, Infamy. It debuted at number 22 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 140,000 copies and went gold. On this album, they would mix things up and soften their hardcore hip-hop sound a bit. The first single, Burn, featuring Big Noid and Vita, was a street banger, reaching number 99 on the Hot 100. And the second single, Hey Love, Anything, featuring 112, was more of an R&B vibe, reaching number 58 on the Hot 100, which was their highest charting single. Next up, we got Common, a Chi-Town legendary MC who started off in the 90s as an underground rapper and would slowly rise to mainstream success in the early 2000s. He dropped his critically acclaimed fourth album, Like Water for Chocolate, in March 2000 after signing to MCA Records. The album was also a commercial success. It debuted at number 16 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 70,000 copies and went gold in 5 months. The second single, The Light, produced by Jay Dilla, was his mainstream breakthrough, reaching number 44 on the Hot 100, which automatically became his highest charting single. However, the success wasn't continuous as Common had dropped his fifth album, Electric Circus, in December 2002, which had debuted at number 47 on the Billboard 200 and failed to reach gold status, selling just 200,000 copies. Despite the commercial failure of the album, it was still praised by the critics. The lead single, Come Close, featuring Mary J. Blige, was a fan favorite, reaching number 65 on the Hot 100. Outside of that, Common would still continue to be on the charts as a featured artist. He collaborated with his then girlfriend, Erykah Badu, on the hit single Love of My Life, an ode to hip-hop, which reached number 9 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Birdman. The co-founder of Cash Money Records and one half of the Big Timers, Birdman would also branch off and do solo albums. He dropped his debut album, Birdman, in November 2002. Instead of going by Birdman, he went by Baby at the time. The album debuted at number 24 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 108,000 copies and went gold. The first single, Do That, featuring Diddy, Manny Fresh, and Tatis, reached number 33 on the Hot 100. And the second single, What Happened to That Boy, featuring Clips, reached number 45 on the Hot 100. Birdman would also secure another hit as a featured artist on Genuine's Hell Yeah in 2003, which reached number 17 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Scarface, a southern hip-hop legend from Houston, Texas. He started off in the late 80s with a group called the Ghetto Boys alongside Willie D, DJ Reddy, and Bushwick Bill, who became popular in the 90s. In conjunction with the group's popularity, Scarface also branched off and had a successful solo career, becoming one of the most popular rappers of the decade. He would still have some relevancy in the early 2000s. He dropped his sixth album, Last of a Dying Breed, in October 2000. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 134,000 copies and went gold. No hit single needed. In 2002, he would switch labels, leaving Rap-A-Lot Records to sign with Def Jam, and would release his seventh album, The Fix. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 160,000 copies. With this album, he would become acclimated with his new label mates. The lead single, Guess Who's Back, featuring Jay-Z and Beanie Siegel, reached number 79 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Juelz Santana, one-fourth of the Dipset crew. Rose to popularity in the early 2000s off his appearances on Cam'ron's hit singles, Oh Boy and Hey Ma, and with the release of the group's debut album in 2003. Shortly after that, Juelz would drop his solo debut album, From Me to You, the same year. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 74,000 copies. Although it failed to reach gold status, this was just the beginning for Juelz. Stay tuned for the next chapter to follow up on him. Next up, we got Obi Trice. Real name, no gimmicks. Two trailer park girls go round the outside, round the outside, round the outside. Nah, I'm playing. But yeah, Obi Trice, that wasn't just his rap name. That's his actual name for real, which already sounded like a dope rapper name. He was pretty much born a rapper. Also a Detroit native, he was signed to Eminem Shady Records. In 2002, his debut single, Rap Name, was released, which appeared on the 8 Mile soundtrack and was sampled as an intro on Eminem's Without Me single. This was early promotion to break Obi Trice to the mainstream. In September 2003, his debut album, Cheers, was released. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 226,000 copies and went gold. The album spawned a couple hit singles. The lead single, Got Some Teeth, reached number 54 on the Hot 100. And the final single, The Setup, featuring Nate Dogg, was released at the top of the following year, reaching number 73. Next up, we got Nappy Roots. The 6-man group from Kentucky first bursted onto the scene in the early 2000s. They signed with Atlantic Records and released their debut single, Aw Nah, in December 2001, which reached number 51 on the Hot 100. This single would be included on their major label debut album, Watermelon Chicken and Grits, which was released in February 2002. The album was a slow burner at first, not selling well immediately, but then came the second single, Ho Folks, featuring Anthony Hamilton, reaching number 21 on the Hot 100. Over the years, this single became a southern hip-hop classic. Following this, the album sales of Watermelon Chicken and Grits would start to increase. It would peak at number 24 on the Billboard 200 and go platinum in a matter of months. Next on the C-list, we got Wu-Tang Clan. Yeah, it's crazy how Wu-Tang was still popular to some degree beyond the 90s. But in my ODB voice, Wu-Tang is for the children, and Wu-Tang is the best. In the year 2000, they dropped their third album, The W. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 301,000 copies and went platinum. One of the singles, Gravel Pit, really stood out and was chosen as one of the singles. Although it didn't chart on the Hot 100, it was well received on Urban Airplay and was also a massive hit in Europe. In 2001, they were back at it again with the release of their fourth album, Iron Flag, but this time without ODB and Capadonna. It debuted at number 32 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 153,000 copies and went gold. After this, the group would go on hiatus. Next up, we got Black Rob, another rapper from this era who sadly passed away a few years ago. Rest in peace to him as well. Black Rob first got some notoriety in the mid to late 90s by his association with Bad Boy Records, appearing on some remixes. He would then sign to the label and drop his debut album, Life Story, in March 2000. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 178,000 copies and went platinum in a few months, solely off the strength of the lead single, Whoa, which reached number 43 on the Hot 100. Following this, he would appear on a couple more hits with Diddy in 2001, with Bad Boy for Life and Let's Get It. Next up, we got Trina, aka the baddest bitch. That's her nickname, I ain't calling her one, but I'm just gonna call her Trina, that's it. At first, Trina was looking to become a real estate agent and was studying to get her license. But she caught the attention of rapper Trick Daddy, who asked her to rap on his 1999 hit single, Nan, which reached number 62 on the Hot 100. This gave her some notoriety. She would then sign to Slip and Slide Records. Following this, she would release her debut album, The Baddest Bitch, in March 2000. It debuted at number 33 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. One of the singles, Pull Over, was her first charted single as a lead artist, reaching number 93 on the Hot 100. In 2002, Trina would drop her second album, Diamond Princess. It debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 67,000 copies and also reached gold status. The lead single, No Patties, featuring Tweet, was a street single, reaching number 88 on the R&B hip-hop chart. The second single, Be Alright, featuring Ludacris, was more upscale, reaching number 83 on the Hot 100. Outside of that, Trina would have some hits as a featured artist. She appeared on Missy Elliott's 1 Minute Man and the remix of Chingy's Right There. And to wrap up the C-list, we got Redman, aka Reggie, aka Funk Doc, who was one of the most popular rappers in the 90s. By the early 2000s, Redman was a rap veteran who was still relevant. In May 2001, he dropped his fifth album, Malpractice. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 148,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Let's Get Dirty, I Can't Get in the Club, featuring DJ Kool, reached number 97 on the Hot 100. The song was then recreated for Christina Aguilera's hit single, Dirty, which he was also featured on. It reached number 48 on the Hot 100 and was a massive global hit around the world. Outside of music, Redman did some acting, appearing in How High the Movie with Method Man and Scary Movie 3. Also, Redman had one of the most memorable episodes on MTV Cribs. He had lived in a small 2-bedroom household in a middle-class neighborhood. MTV had picked out a few other luxurious homes for him to make his appearance in, but Redman refused because he didn't want to be fake, instead wanted to keep it real and show the fans and viewers how he really lived, which was a highly respectable move looking back on it. Now for the D-list, and when I get to this part for each chapter, in order to avoid making this video longer than it needs to be, I'm gonna shorten this segment by just reading the names. On the early 2000s D-list, we got BG, Master P, Silk the Shocker, Petey Pablo, Afroman, Smiles and Southstar, Timbaland and Magoo, Insane Clown Posse, Cypress Hill, David Banner, Project Pat, Joe Budden, Chic Louch, Bone Crusher, Killer Mike, Angie Martinez, Memphis Bleak, Beanie Man, Beanie Siegel, Freeway, Kia, Foxy Brown, M.O.P., Jermaine Dupri, Will Smith, Talib Kweli, Ghostface Killer, Dilated Peoples, Gangstar, Too Short, Eric Sermon, Fueled Mob, The Roots, Lil Zane, Nick Cannon, DJ Funkmaster Flex, and DJ K-Slay. And now, before we wrap up this chapter, we'll get into some other mentions. First off, Big Pun's death. He passed away in February 2000 from a heart attack due to his obesity. A couple months later, his second and final album, Yeah Baby, was posthumously released. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 179,000 copies and went gold in a few months. Also, Tupac's posthumous albums. After tragically getting murdered in '96, Tupac's run would still be extended beyond the '90s even after his death, as he had enough tracks and vocals left in the vault to allow some producers to step in and create more albums to keep his name alive and uphold his legacy, with his mother Afeni Shakur getting some executive producer credits. In 2001, his 7th album, Until the End of Time, was put together and released in February of that year as a double album. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 427,000 copies and went triple platinum in a few months. One of the singles of the same name featuring RL reached number 52 on the Hot 100. In 2002, they put together his 8th album, Better Days, which was released in November of that year, also as a double album. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 366,000 copies and went double platinum in a few months. It spawned a couple hit singles. The lead single, which is my personal favorite, Thug's Mansion featuring Nas and Jay Phoenix, reached number 19 on the Hot 100. And the second single, Still Ballin' featuring Trick Daddy, reached number 69 on the Hot 100. In 2003, the soundtrack for the Tupac Resurrection documentary was curated and released also in November. The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 420,000 copies and went platinum. The Eminem produced lead single Runnin' Dying to Live featuring Biggie Smalls reached number 19 on the Hot 100. And last but not least, Def Jam Vendetta, the first ever hip-hop fighting game. This iconic video game was released in 2003 for PS2 and Xbox, and quickly gained popularity for its combination of hip-hop and pro wrestling. The well-known rappers who appeared in this game include the likes of Keith Murray, DMX, Ludacris, Ghostface Killah, Method Man, Redman, Scarface, Joe Budden, Nori, and more. Chapter 2, the mid-2000s. Starting off with the A-list. First off, we got 50 Cent. Following his monster debut album, 50 Cent would drop another nuclear bomb in 2005, with the release of his second album, The Massacre, which came out in March. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 1.1 million copies and went 5 times platinum by the end of the year. The lead single, Disco Inferno, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The second single, Candy Shop, featuring Olivia, topped the Hot 100, making it his third number 1 hit. The third single, Just a Little Bit, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. And the fourth single, Out of Control the Remix, featuring Mobb Deep, reached number 6 on the Hot 100. 50 just couldn't miss back then. Outside of music, 50 starred in his own movie, Get Rich or Die Tryin', released in November 2005, named after his debut album. It was a crime drama film based on his earlier life before the fame, turning away from the streets to make it into the rap game. Behind the movie was the soundtrack released by his label G Unit Records the same month. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 320,000 copies and went platinum in a month. It spawned a few hit singles by 50 on the soundtrack. Hustler's Ambition, which reached number 65 on the Hot 100, Window Shopper, which reached number 20, and the remix of Best Friend featuring Olivia, which reached number 35. Also in 2005, 50 had his own video game called 50 Cent Bulletproof, released for PS2 and Xbox. Next up, we got The Game, who was another one of 50 Cent's rivals back then. Just like 50, he had a similar story before his rise to fame. The Game had also survived being shot. After the shooting, The Game would start listening to classic hip-hop albums, studying the craft, and would start rapping. After a couple mixtapes, he would punch his ticket into the rap game, signing a record deal with Dr. Dre's Aftermath Entertainment through Interscope Records in late 2003. After a year of artist development, The Game dropped his debut single, West Side Story, featuring 50 Cent in September 2004, which reached number 93 on the Hot 100. A follow-up single called How We Do, also featuring 50 Cent, was released a couple months later. This would be his first ever mainstream hit, reaching number 4 on the Hot 100. Both singles would appear on his debut album, The Documentary, which dropped in January 2005. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 586,000 copies and went double platinum by the end of the year. Days after the album's release, the third single, Hate It or Love It, featuring 50 Cent, was released and would be the biggest song of his career, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100. But in the aftermath of the album's release, there would be some tension between The Game and 50, despite the fact they were making hits together. There was a dispute about writing credits for the album and who really wrote what. The Game would start to burn bridges with 50 Cent. The beef would eventually escalate to a shootout at the Hot 97 studio. The Game would also go on a tirade during his Summer Jam performance, dissing 50 Cent publicly on stage, and referred to G Unit as G-U Not. After what 50 did for him to help him succeed, The Game became a disrespectful and spoiled brat. Due to this conflict with 50, who was also with Aftermath Interscope, The Game would be released from his contract and signed a new record deal with Geffen Records. The Game would still be on top. With the new label, he dropped his second album, Doctor's Advocate, in November 2006. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 358,000 copies and nearly sold 1 million copies. The first single, It's Okay, One Blood, featuring Junior Reid, reached number 71 on the Hot 100. The second single, Let's Ride, reached number 46 on the Hot 100. The third single, Wouldn't Get Far, featuring Kanye West, reached number 64 on the Hot 100. Although he couldn't make the same big hits without 50, he was still able to sustain without him. Next up, we got Kanye West. First got into the game as a producer in the late 90s and would start to get more recognition in the early 2000s for his impeccable creative sound. But little did the public know that Kanye could really spit. Around this time, he was already working with Jay-Z, and after spitting a verse on a track called The Bounce off the Blueprint 2, he would sign Kanye to his Rockefeller label. Kanye's debut single, Through the Wire, was released in late 2003, which reached number 15 on the Hot 100. It still became a hit record despite the fact that he recorded the song with his jaw wired shut as a result of a near-fatal car accident, where he had to undergo reconstructive surgery for his injuries. He literally spat that whole song through the wire. The following single, Slow Jams with Twista and Jamie Foxx, was released a few months later and would top the Hot 100, making it Kanye's first ever number 1 hit. The two singles created enough buzz for Kanye as a new artist. This would be followed by the release of his debut album, The College Dropout, in February 2004. It received both critical acclaim and commercial success. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 441,000 copies and went double platinum in a few months. More hit singles would materialize. The third single, All Falls Down, featuring Selena Johnson, was released the following month. It reached number 7 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Jesus Walks, was another banger, reaching number 11 on the Hot 100. Kanye West had a ride. And this would be the first of many more to come. In 2005, he would win a Grammy for Best Rap Album. After the victory, Kanye went back to work for album number 2. His second album, Late Registration, was released in August 2005. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 860,000 copies, nearly doubling the first week sales of his first album, which was a huge jump. Kanye was really blowing up at this point. Late Registration would go triple platinum in 6 months. The album also received a lot of praise by the critics, referring to it as a pivotal release in hip-hop, showing the culture that you don't have to just make gangster rap to sell a lot of records. Also, this album had some hits. The first single, Diamonds from Sierra Leone, reached number 43 on the Hot 100. The second single, Gold Digger, featuring Jamie Foxx, topped the Hot 100, making it Kanye's second number 1 hit. The third single, Heard Him Say, featuring Adam Levine, reached number 26 on the Hot 100. And the fourth single, Touch the Sky, featuring Lupe Fiasco, reached number 42. Next up, we got Eminem. In November 2004, he dropped his fourth album, Encore. Personally, I think this is his worst album ever, but still, it topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 710,000 copies and went quadruple platinum in a month. The album had 5 singles released for it. The first single, Just Lose It, reached number 6 on the Hot 100. The second single, Encore, featuring Dr. Dre and 50 Cent, reached number 25. The third single, Like Toy Soldiers, reached number 34. The fourth single, Mockingbird, reached number 11. And the last single, Ass Like That, reached number 60. Despite being in his prime, Eminem was at a crossroads during this time and had already been contemplating retirement for a while, even this early in his career, but made it clear to the fans that he indeed wasn't retiring and just needed a break. In December 2005, he dropped the greatest hits album called Curtain Call, The Hits. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 441,000 copies and went double platinum in a couple months. The album featured a couple new singles. The first single, When I'm Gone, reached number 8 on the Hot 100. The second single, Shake That, featuring Nate Dogg, reached number 6. In December 2006, he put out a compilation album called Eminem Presents The Re-Up on behalf of his label, Shady Records. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 309,000 copies and went platinum 2 months later. The lead single off the project, You Don't Know, with 50 Cent, Lloyd Banks, and Cassius, reached number 12 on the Hot 100. Also, before the Encore album, his D12 group had returned with another album called D12 World in April 2004. Topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 544,000 copies and went double platinum in a few months. The album had a couple hit singles. My Band was the first single, which reached number 6 on the Hot 100, and the second single, How Come, reached number 27. Next up, we got Nelly. In September 2004, he would drop 2 albums on the same day, Sweat and Suit. Sweat being a more rap-focused album, and Suit being a more R&B-focused album. Suit topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 396,000 copies, while Sweat came in at number 2, selling 342,000 copies the first week. Sweat went platinum, and Suit went triple platinum. Both albums had 3 singles released. For Suit, the first single, My Place, featuring Jaheim, reached number 4 on the Hot 100. The second single, Over and Over, featuring Tim McGraw, was a game changer, being the first ever rap country crossover collab. It reached number 3 on the Hot 100. And the third single, And They Say, reached number 64. The singles for Sweat weren't as popular, but were still bangers. The first single, Flap Your Wings, reached number 52 on the Hot 100. Drop down and get your eagle on, girl. The second single, Tilt Your Head Back, featuring Christina Aguilera, reached number 58. And the third single, Na 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 Na, was more so a street single, reached number 65 on the R&B hip-hop chart. In November 2005, Nelly would combine the 2 albums into one compilation album released as Sweatsuit. It peaked at number 26 on the Billboard 200 and went gold. It featured a brand new single called Grills, featuring Paul Wall, Ali, and Yip. It would top the Hot 100, making it Nelly's 4th number 1 hit. Next up, we got Ludacris. In December 2004, Luda dropped his 4th album, The Red Light District. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 322,000 copies and went double platinum in less than a year. The first single, Get Back, reached number 13 on the Hot 100. The second single, Number 1 Spot, reached number 19. And the fourth single, Pimpin' All Over the World, featuring Bobby V, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. A couple years later, Luda would switch the style up by getting rid of the braids and cutting his hair. In September 2006, he dropped his 5th album, Release Therapy. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 309,000 copies and went platinum. The lead single, Moneymaker, featuring Pharrell, topped the Hot 100, making it Luda's 2nd number 1 hit as a lead artist. The third single, Runaway Love, featuring Mary J. Blige, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. This album would also win a Grammy for Best Rap Album. Outside of music, Ludacris would do some more acting, appearing in Crash and Hustle and Flow, and also a couple more video game appearances in Def Jam Fight for New York and NBA Ballers Phenom. Next up, we got Black Eyed Peas. This group first got some mainstream attention in the tail end of the early 2000s. Before that, they started off as an alternative hip-hop group in the late 90s, already signed to Interscope Records. At the time, it was just a three-man group with will.i.am, Apple D-Ap, and Taboo. After the first two albums, they added Fergie to the group and dropped their third album, Elephunk, in June of 2003, which went gold in a few months, thanks to the lead single, Where Is the Love, featuring Justin Timberlake, which reached number 8 on the Hot 100. But the BEP would drop more hits. In January 2004, the third single off the album, Hey Mama, reached number 23 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Let's Get It Started, reached number 21 on the Hot 100. These next two singles would boost the album sales for Elephunk, upscaling it from a gold-selling album to a double platinum-selling album. In May 2005, they dropped their fourth album, Monkey Business. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 291,000 copies and went triple platinum by the end of the year. The first single, Don't Funk With My Heart, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The second single, Don't Lie, which is my personal favorite by them, reached number 14 on the Hot 100. The third single, My Humps, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. And the fourth single, Pump It, reached number 18. Despite the commercial success of the album, it didn't really get any positive reviews by the critics, as they had accused the group of selling out and calling the music disposable pop. Next on the A-list, we got T.I. In the mid-2000s, T.I. would start ascending to the top. In November 2004, he dropped his third album, Urban Legend. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 195,000 copies and went platinum in a few months, making it his first platinum-selling album at the time. The lead single, Bring 'Em Out, Bring 'Em Out, Bring 'Em Out, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. The second single, You Don't Know Me, reached number 23 on the Hot 100, which also received a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Solo Performance. The third single, ASAP, reached number 75. In March 2006, he dropped his fourth album, King. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 522,000 copies and went platinum in less than a month, making it his first number 1 album. The lead single, What You Know, reached number 3 on the Hot 100 and won a Grammy for Best Rap Solo Performance. The second single, Why You Wanna, reached number 29 on the Hot 100. The final single, Top Back, also reached number 29. Also in 2006, T.I. would get his first number 1 hit as a featured artist on Justin Timberlake's chart-topping single, My Love. Outside of that, T.I. also had a group called PSC with Young Dro, Big Country Kang, Mac Boney, and C-Rock. In 2005, they released their first and only album, 25 to Life, which peaked at number 10 on the Billboard 200 and spawned the hit single, I'm a King, featuring Lil Scrappy, which reached number 67 on the Hot 100. Outside of music, T.I. would also take the plunge into acting, appearing in his first movie, ATL, in 2006, alongside Big Boy, Lauren London, and a few more other names. Next on the A-list, we got Lil Jon. After him and the East Side Boys made a lot of noise in 2003, they would come back with their fifth and final album, Crunk Juice, in November 2004. After a low-performing first week, debuting at number 31 on the Billboard 200, it skyrocketed to number 3 the following week, moving another 363,000 copies, which was an 841% increase in sales. It went double platinum in just a couple months. The lead single, What You Gon' Do, featuring Lil Scrappy, reached number 22 on the Hot 100. The second single, Lovers and Friends, featuring Usher and Ludacris, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. I like to refer to this single as Yeah Part 2. After this album, Lil Jon would split up from the East Side Boys and go solo. He would still do his thing as a producer, creating more hits for other artists. In 2006, he released a single called Snap Your Fingers featuring E40 and Sean P. It was a smash hit single, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. This was supposed to be the lead single for a new album he was working on at the time called Crunk Rock, but it didn't make the album as it was constantly being reworked and never got released until 2010. Next up, we got Sean Paul. After his 2003 success, he would win a Grammy in 2004 for Best Reggae Album. That same year, he also made his first ever video game appearance in the hip-hop fighting game Def Jam Fight for New York. In 2005, Sean Paul would be back at it again with the release of his third album, The Trinity, in September. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 107,000 copies and went platinum in 6 months. The lead single, We Be Burnin', reached number 6 on the Hot 100. The third single, Temperature, topped the Hot 100, making it Sean Paul's third number 1 hit. This single would turn out to be Sean Paul's signature song years later. The final single, Give It Up To Me, featuring Keisha Cole, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. Next on the A-list, we got Young Jeezy, who now only goes by Jeezy after dropping the Young from his name. At first, he initially went by Lil J when he started off as an independent artist. Before making it big, he was a part of a southern hip-hop group called Boys in the Hood, along with Big Duke, Big G, and Jody Breeze. Collectively, they made a little noise. They signed with Bad Boy Records and dropped their self-titled debut album. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 and spawned the hit single Dem Boys, which reached number 56 on the Hot 100. Following this, Young Jeezy would eventually end up leaving the group as his solo career would begin to take off. He would end up being more bigger than the group itself. He signed a joint venture deal with Def Jam and dropped his major label debut album, Let's Get It, Thug Motivation 101, just a month later after the Boys in the Hood album. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 172,000 copies and went platinum in just a couple months. The lead single, And Then What, featuring Manny Fresh, reached number 67 on the Hot 100. The second single, Soul Survivor, featuring Akon, would end up becoming the biggest song of his career, reaching number 4 on the Hot 100. In December 2006, he would drop his second album, Thug Motivation 102, The Inspiration. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 352,000 copies and went platinum, making it his first number 1 album. The lead single, I Love It, reached number 14 on the Hot 100. The second single, Go Get It, featuring R. Kelly, reached number 18 on the Hot 100. Next on the A-list, we got Snoop Dogg. After being around for over a decade at this point, Snoop Dogg was still in the mix and still making hit records. In 2004, he would leave Priority Records and partner with Pharrell's Star Trek Entertainment. That year, Snoop Dogg would also drop his 7th album, R&G, Rhythm and Gangsta, The Masterpiece, in November. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 225,000 copies and went platinum in a month. The lead single, Drop It Like It's Hot, featuring Pharrell, topped the Hot 100, making it Snoop Dogg's first ever number 1 hit at the age of 33. The second single, Let's Get Blown, also featuring Pharrell, reached number 54 on the Hot 100. The third single, Signs, featuring Charlie Wilson and Justin Timberlake, reached number 46. In November 2006, he would release his 8th album, The Blue Carpet Treatment. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 264,000 copies and went gold. Although it didn't sell as well and the hits were lacking, it still received positive reviews from the critics. The third single, That's That, featuring R. Kelly, appeared on the Hot 100, reaching number 20. Also in 2006, Snoop Dogg would get another number 1 hit, this time as a featured artist on Akon's chart-topping single, I Wanna Love You. In between both of those albums, Snoop Dogg was a part of another West Coast hip-hop group called 213 with Nate Dogg and Warren G. They dropped their first and only album, The Hard Way, in 2004. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 95,000 copies. Next on the A-list, we got Chamillionaire, who started off as an underground rapper in the early 2000s. By the year 2004, he started up his own label, Chamilitary Entertainment, and signed a distribution deal with Universal Records. In November 2005, his debut album, The Sound of Revenge, was released. It debuted at number 10 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 130,000 copies and went platinum in a few months. The lead single, Turn It Up, featuring Lil Flip, reached number 41 on the Hot 100. The second single, Ridin' Dirty, featuring Crazy Bone, was one of the biggest songs of 2006, topping the Hot 100. The song itself would get a parody remix called White and Nerdy by the one and only Weird Al Yankovic. Chamillionaire would get some more hits as a featured artist on Get Up with Sierra in 2006, which reached number 7 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Twista, at the time who was known as the fastest rapper in the world. One fact about Twista is that it took him 12 years to blow up. He had dropped his debut album in '92, and after years of putting out more music and perfecting his craft, he would finally make it big. In January 2004, he dropped his 4th album, Kamikaze, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 312,000 copies and went platinum, making it his best-selling album to date. The lead single, Slow Jams, which he shared with Kanye West, featuring Jamie Foxx, topped the Hot 100. The second single, Overnight Celebrity, also featuring Kanye West, reached number 6 on the Hot 100. The third single, So Sexy, featuring R. Kelly, reached number 25. In November 2004, he dropped an alternative version of the song called Hope. The original was on the Kamikaze album, which featured CeeLo Green, but this new version featuring Faith Evans will be included in the Coach Carter movie soundtrack and was used for the movie's memorable ending. The song also did well on the charts, reaching number 31 on the Hot 100. In 2005, Twista would release his 5th album, The Day After. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 129,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Girl Tonight, featuring Trey Songz, reached number 14 on the Hot 100. And to wrap up the A-list, we got Jay-Z. After saying he would retire following the release of the Black Album, Jay-Z was still out here releasing music and would eventually come back for another album. Heck, even back then as a youngin', I wasn't even buying the retirement stuff. I knew Jay-Z wasn't gonna stop rapping at that time. I knew it was cap. In October 2004, he dropped another collab album with R. Kelly called Unfinished Business. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 215,000 copies and went platinum. The lead single, Big Chips, reached number 39 on the Hot 100. In my opinion, this album should have never happened. They should have just stopped working together after the first album because they clearly had some tension between them and couldn't even finish the Best of Both Worlds tour due to R. Kelly's unprofessionalism and erratic behavior. Not to mention, Jay-Z was also working with a pedophile. Anyways, moving on, the two would never work together again, and instead, Jay-Z would cross over into a different musical market. That same year in 2004, him and Linkin Park put out a collab EP called Collision Course, a 6-track EP that contained mashups of the rapper and the rock band, combining hip-hop and rock music into one project. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 368,000 copies and went platinum in a few months. One of the mashups, Numb, Encore, was chosen as the single. It reached number 20 on the Hot 100 and was a massive hit worldwide. In November 2006, Jay-Z would return with his 9th album, Kingdom Come. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 680,000 copies and quickly went double platinum. The lead single, Show Me What You Got, reached number 8 on the Hot 100. The second single, Last One, featuring Chrisette Michele, reached number 58 on the Hot 100. Now for the B-list. First up, we got 3-6 Mafia. At this time, Lord Infamous would leave the group. Despite now being a 3-man group, 3-6 Mafia would still continue to ascend and reach new heights. DJ Paul, Juicy J, and Crunchy Black were able to hold it down and keep things rolling. In September 2005, they released their 8th album, Most Known Unknown. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 125,000 copies and went platinum in a couple months. The lead single off the album, Stay Fly, featuring Young Buck, 8Ball, and MJG, became their biggest song, reaching number 13 on the Hot 100. The second single, Poppin' My Collar, reached number 21 on the Hot 100. The remix also features Project Tata. Prior to all this, the group had won an Oscar the same year for Best Original Song with It's Hard Out Here for a Pimp, which was included on the movie soundtrack for Hustlin' Flow. This time period was 3-6 Mafia at their peak. Next on the B-list, we got Lil Flip. After the success of his previous album, Lil Flip would take things up a notch and put out some mainstream hits. He had signed a new record deal with Sony Urban Music and released his third album, You Gotta Feel Me, in March 2004. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 198,000 copies and went platinum in a few months. The lead single, Game Over, Flip, reached number 15 on the Hot 100. The second single, Sunshine, featuring Leah, was one of the biggest songs of summer 2004, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100, also making it Lil Flip's biggest song of his career. Next on the B-list, we got Bow Wow. Puberty started a hit and the voice got deeper. This would make the ladies fall in love with Bow Wow even more, and would also put out some of the biggest songs of his career. In July 2005, he dropped his 4th album, Wanted. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 129,000 copies and went platinum by the end of the year. The lead single, Let Me Hold You, featuring Omarion, reached number 4 on the Hot 100. The second single, Like You, featuring his then-girlfriend Sierra, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The third single, Fresh as a Miz, featuring Jaquan and Jermaine Dupri, reached number 23 on the Hot 100. After this, Bow Wow would get rid of the braids and cut his hair for the next album. In December 2006, he dropped his 5th album, The Price of Fame. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 262,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Shorty Like Mine, featuring Chris Brown and Jonte Austin, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. The second single, Out of My System, featuring T-Pain, reached number 22 on the Hot 100. Outside of this, Bow Wow also got more movie roles, appearing in Roll Bounds, Johnson Family Vacation, and The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift. Next up, we got Chingy. The momentum from his 2003 success carried over into the following year. In 2004, he dropped his second album, Powerballin'. It debuted at number 172 on the Billboard 200 after selling 7,000 copies in the first few days, then skyrocketed to number 10, selling another 120,000 copies, and went platinum in a few months just off one hit single, which was Baller Baby, reaching number 20 on the Hot 100. That same year, he was featured on the global smash hit single, I Like That by Houston, which reached number 11 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Chingy would drop his third album, Hood Star. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 77,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Pulling Me Back, featuring Tyrese, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. The second single, Damn Jeans, featuring Jermaine Dupri, reached number 59. Next on the B-list, we got Lil Wayne. During this time for Weezy was the birth of the Carter album series. In January 2004, he dropped his 4th album, The Carter, which was the first one. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 116,000 copies and went gold in a few months. The album's second single, Go DJ, was a big mainstream hit, reaching number 14 on the Hot 100, which was his highest charting single at the time. In December 2005, he would quickly follow up with the sequel, The Carter 2. It received critical acclaim and has been regarded by fans as arguably his best work. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 240,000 copies and went platinum in 3 months. The lead single, Fireman, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The second single, Hustler Music, reached number 87 on the Hot 100. Despite the lower charting singles, they have aged gracefully over time and have been considered classics. Also during this time was the birth of Mixtape Weezy. And on his mixtapes, Weezy would really go in with the bars. The Dedication 1 and 2 with DJ Drama both received critical acclaim. When it came to the mixtapes, nobody could see Lil Wayne. Outside of music during this time, Lil Wayne was looking to further his education. He was a high school dropout after becoming a rap star at the age of 17. He would earn his GED, then enrolled at the University of Houston, but dropped out the same year due to his conflicting schedule. He would then switch to the University of Phoenix and majored in psychology, taking online courses. Next up, we got Outkast. After the speaker box The Love Below, the end was definitely near for Outkast. In 2006, they were backed by popular demand once again, and dropped their 6th and final album, Idlewild, which was also a soundtrack to the movie of the same name. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 196,000 copies and went platinum, even without any major hit singles. Next up, we got Jadakiss. Following his debut album, Jadakiss would return with album number 2, Kiss of Death, in June 2004. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 246,000 copies and quickly went gold. The lead single, Time's Up, featuring Nate Dogg, reached number 70 on the Hot 100. The second single, Why, featuring Anthony Hamilton, would end up being his biggest song, reaching number 11 on the Hot 100. The song also received some controversy after Jadakiss took shots at political figures such as Bill O'Reilly and George Bush, who was the president at the time. The third single, You Make Me Wanna, featuring Mariah Carey, reached number 21 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Fat Joe. After going on a bit of a slump, Fat Joe would catch fire again. In 2004, he would reunite with his group called Terror Squad, a hip-hop collective from the Bronx, alongside Remy Ma, DJ Khaled, Armageddon, Tony Sunshine, Cuban Link, Cool and Dre, and more. Big Pun was also a part of the group before he passed away. They had dropped their first album in '99, and 5 years later would reload and come back with their second album, True Story. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 90,000 copies. Although it was a flop and failed to even reach gold status, it spawned the number 1 hit single, Lean Back by Fat Joe and Remy Ma, making it Fat Joe's biggest song ever. The song was also remixed with Lil Jon and Eminem on it. In 2005, Fat Joe would drop his next solo album, All or Nothing. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 106,000 copies. One of the singles, Get It Poppin', featuring Nelly, was a top 10 hit, reaching number 9 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Fat Joe would drop his 7th album, Me, Myself, and I. It debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 60,000 copies. Although his albums weren't really selling that well, he was still making hits. The lead single, Make It Rain, featuring Lil Wayne, reached number 13 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Diddy. In 2004, he was featured on the smash hit single, I Don't Wanna Know by Mario Winans, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Diddy dropped his 4th album, Press Play. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 170,000 copies, and thankfully, didn't go platinum. It only went gold. The lead single, Come To Me, featuring Nicole Scherzinger, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. The second single, Last Night, featuring Keisha Cole, was released the following year. It was also a top 10 hit, reaching number 10 on the Hot 100. Not gonna lie, back then as a high school kid, and way before his dirty laundry was exposed, I was just starting to get tired of hearing Diddy. I was like, can his old non-writing fake rapper self just retire already? I don't want to hear him no more. I didn't really like the song Come To Me at first, but years later I actually liked the song and it brings back memories looking back when I listen to it. But unfortunately right now, I am not listening to Diddy at the moment. His legacy and reputation has been destroyed forever. And thankfully, he won't be mentioned for the rest of this video because his run stopped right here. Moving on, next on the list we got Yin Yang Twins. These guys had 03 to 05 on lock with the hits. Their previous album, Me and My Brother, would reach platinum status, and they would drop their next album, USA, United States of Atlanta, in June 2005. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 201,000 copies and went platinum in 2 months. The lead single, Wait, the Whisper Song, reached number 15 on the Hot 100. The second single, Bad, featuring Mike Jones and Mr. Collar Park, reached number 29 on the Hot 100. The final single, Shake, featuring Pitbull, reached number 41. The following year, their momentum would slow down. In November 2006, they dropped their 5th album, Chemically Imbalanced. It only debuted at number 40 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 36,000 copies. The lead single, Dangerous, featuring Wyclef Jean, only reached number 85 on the Hot 100. And that would be their last appearance on the chart since the crunk music era was starting to die out. Next up, we got Lloyd Banks. After the arrival of G-Unit, Lloyd Banks would also make a big splash as a solo act in 2004 with the release of his debut album, The Hunger for More. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 433,000 copies and quickly went platinum. The lead single, On Fire, reached number 8 on the Hot 100. The second single, I'm So Fly, was a street single that did well on urban radio. The third single, Karma, featuring Avon, reached number 17 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Lloyd Banks was back at it again with his second album, Rotten Apple. It wouldn't have nearly the same success as the first album. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 143,000 copies, but failed to reach gold status. The lead single, Hands Up, featuring 50 Cent, only reached number 84 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Young Buck, another member of G-Unit who was also popping during this time. Following Lloyd Banks, it was Young Buck's turn. In 2004, he dropped his debut solo album, Straight Outta Cashville. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 261,000 copies and went platinum. The lead single, Let Me In, featuring 50 Cent, reached number 34 on the Hot 100. The second single, Shorty Wanna Ride With Me, produced by Lil Jon, reached number 17 on the Hot 100. Next on the B-list, we got Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. Who? Mike Jones. Remember that? Coming from the South, Mike Jones would make some noise and become one of the most popular rappers in 2005. He dropped his debut album, Who Is Mike Jones, in the springtime. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 181,000 copies and went platinum in a couple months. The lead single, Still Tipping on Fofos, Wrapped in Fofos, featuring Slim Thug and Paul Wall, reached number 60 on the Hot 100. But the song itself transcended the charts and was bigger than it actually was on paper. The second single, Back Then, reached number 22 on the Hot 100. Outside of that, he was featured on T-Pain's super smash hit single, I'm in Love with a Stripper, which reached number 5 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Paul Wall, a friend and collaborator of Mike Jones, straight out of Houston, Texas, and was one of the very few white rappers who was popping back then. Before his big break, he was signed to a local independent label called Paid in Full Entertainment. Him and Chamillionaire teamed up on a collab album called Get Your Mind Correct, which was released in 2002. Following this, Paul Wall would drop his debut album, Chick Magnet, in 2004. Him and Chamillionaire would then drop another album together called Controversy Sells in January 2005. Paul Wall was getting some underground attention and then would sign a record deal with Atlantic. Following this, he would drop his major label debut, The People's Champ, in September 2005. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 176,000 copies and went platinum in a month. The first single, Sittin' Sideways, reached number 93 on the Hot 100 and was featured in the video game soundtrack for the racing game Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. The second single, Girl, would be his biggest song, reaching number 35 on the Hot 100. That same year, he was also featured on the chart-topping hit single, Grills, alongside Nelly, Ali, and Gipp. Next up, we got Juvenile. After his sixth album, he would team up with fellow New Orleans rappers Wacko and Skip to form a rap group called UTP. They dropped their debut album, The Beginning of the End, in 2004. Although it didn't really make any noise, the lead single, Know Ya Clap, was a popular hit, reaching number 31 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Juvenile would return with his seventh album, Reality Check, after leaving Cash Money Records and signing a new deal with Atlantic Records. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 174,000 copies and went gold, making it his first #1 album. The lead single, Rodeo, reached number 41 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Busta Rhymes. In 2005, he was featured on the super smash hit single, Don't Ya, a cover version by the Pussycat Dolls, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Busta Rhymes dropped his seventh album, The Big Bang, after leaving J Records and signing a new joint venture deal with Aftermath and Interscope. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 209,000 copies and went gold, making it his first #1 album. The lead single, Touch It, reached number 16 on the Hot 100. The remix version of the song with Mary J. Blige, Rod Digga, Missy Elliott, Lloyd Banks, Papoose, and DMX was also very popular. The live performance of the remix at the 2006 BET Awards had a surprise appearance by Eminem. The second single off the album, I Love My Chick, featuring Khalees and will.i.am, reached number 41 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Nas. In November 2004, he dropped his seventh album, Street's Disciple. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 232,000 copies and went platinum in 12 months. This was also his last album with Columbia Records. Only one of the 3 singles charted on the Hot 100, which was Bridging the Gap, featuring his father, Olu Dara, reaching number 94. In 2005, Nas and Jay-Z would publicly reconcile and end their beef with an onstage performance at a surprise concert. The two would then work together and do business together. Nas would sign a joint venture deal with Def Jam, where Jay-Z was the president of the label at the time. Nas would then drop his 8th album, controversially titled Hip Hop Is Dead, in December 2006. The title of the album was inspired by Nas's view of both the music industry and the state of hip-hop at the time. The album was also still co-financed by his former label, Columbia Records. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 356,000 copies and went gold, making it his first #1 album in 7 years. The lead single of the same name, featuring will.i.am, reached number 41 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Beastie Boys, Ad Rock, MCA, and Mike D, the illest hip-hop group of all time. This legendary powerhouse from New York City were the first ever white boys in hip-hop to get it poppin'. They also had crazy longevity, blowing up in the 80s and remained very popular throughout the 90s. And in the 2000s, they weren't done just yet. After a 6-year hiatus, they were backed by popular demand and dropped their 6th album, To the Five Boroughs, in 2004. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 360,000 copies and quickly went platinum, making Beastie Boys the first ever hip-hop act to have a #1 album in 3 different decades. The lead single off the album, Check It Out, reached number 68 on the Hot 100. One of the other 4 singles off the album, An Open Letter to NYC, was featured on the soundtrack for the video game NBA Street V3, which was released in 2005, where the group had also appeared in the game as unlockable playable characters. Next up, we got Young Jock. After signing to Diddy's newly formed spin-off label Bad Boy South, Young Jock would rise to fame. In April 2006, he dropped his debut album, It's Going Down. It was one of the biggest songs of 2006, reaching number 3 on the Hot 100. This would be followed by the release of his debut album, New Jock City, in June. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 150,000 copies and went gold. The second single, I Know You See It, was another banger, reaching number 17 on the Hot 100. This newfound success also made Young Jock one of the most wealthiest rappers at the time. He was on the Forbes list after reportedly earning $10 million for the year. Next up, we got Daddy Yankee, a rapper from Puerto Rico who was looking to push reggaeton music to new heights. He started off in the 90s. However, he actually wanted to play baseball and was aspiring to become a pro in the sport. The team was willing to give him a shot and offered him a contract, but before signing, he was tragically shot in the hip by a stray bullet, crushing his baseball dreams. He would spend a year and a half recovering from the gunshot wound, and the bullet was never removed. This caused him to go all in on music. He dropped his first album in '95 and his second album in 2002 when he was signed to VI Music, which is a major label in Puerto Rico. Following this, Daddy Yankee would launch his own label called El Cartel Records in partnership with VI Music. He would then release his third album, Barrio Fino, which is Spanish for Fine Hood, in July 2004. With an already supportive fan base in the Latin music market, it debuted at number 67 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 18,000 copies. The album had 4 singles. The second single, Gasolina, was released in October, and it would be an absolute game changer. Despite the song being in Spanish and not a single English word in the lyrics, the public at large still received it very well, including myself. Although I had no idea what he was saying at all, I really loved the song. This single opened the doors for reggaeton to get mainstream attention. Gasolina reached number 32 on the Hot 100, which was Daddy Yankee's first ever appearance on the chart. The single was also very popular worldwide, especially in Europe. The momentum of Gasolina would boost the album sales of Barrio Fino. It re-entered the Billboard 200 and rose back up the charts, peaking at number 26 and would reach RAAA platinum status in April 2005 after selling 1 million copies in the US. With the commercial success of this album, Daddy Yankee would be referred to as the Messiah of reggaeton. He would also get some business opportunities, signing a multi-year endorsement deal with Reebok and a 5-year distribution deal with Interscope Records. In December 2005, he dropped a live album called Barrio Fino en Directo, which contained audio of live performances from his Barrio Fino World Tour, as well as some newly recorded tracks. It debuted at number 24 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 100,000 copies and eventually went gold. The lead single, Rompe, reached number 24 on the Hot 100. The remix version of the song features Lloyd Banks and Young Buck. Next up, we got Pretty Ricky. This 4-man group from Miami, Florida used to make the girls go crazy back then. Instead of just being a rap group, these guys were more so a combination of both hip-hop and R&B meshed together. You had Pleasure P, Spectacular, Baby Blue, and Slickum. 3 rappers and 1 singer. They first started off in the late 90s, signing to Blue Stars Entertainment, which is an independent label, after making some local noise. Then years later, of perfecting their craft, they got enough attention to get a life-changing record deal, signing with Atlantic Records. These guys would quickly fill a void after the end of the B2K era, and would become the hottest boy band in the urban market. In March 2005, Pretty Ricky dropped their debut single, Grind With Me, which instantly became a smash hit, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. 2 months later, they would drop their debut album, Blue Stars. It debuted at number 16 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 56,000 copies and went gold in 2 months. The second single, Your Body, was another banger, reaching number 12 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Dem Franchise Boys. This 5-man group from Atlanta were quite the trendsetters in the mid-2000s. In the group, you had Parlay, Buddy, Pimpin', Jizzleman. They first signed to Universal Records and dropped their self-titled debut album in 2004. The album didn't sell well at all, but the lead single, White Tee, was a memorable trendy hit, reaching number 79 on the Hot 100. It was because of this you heard some rappers around this time referencing this song by quoting "in my white tee" on their own songs. So this definitely had some influence in the hip-hop community, both lyrically and fashionably, since it was also very popular to wear a long white t-shirt that was 2-3 sizes bigger than your actual size. They were dropped by Universal Records and would end up in a better situation, signing to So So Def. In February 2006, they dropped their second album, On Top of Our Game. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 106,000 copies and went gold. The remix of I Think They Like Me featuring Jermaine Dupri, Da Brat, and Bow Wow was the lead single. It reached number 15 on the Hot 100. The second single, Lean With It, Rock With It, featuring Peanut and Charlie, reached number 7 on the Hot 100. This song also came with a popular dance move which involves finger snapping to the beat with each hand from left to right. This type of hip-hop music was called snap music, which started to become popular around this time. Next up, we got Trick Daddy. In 2004, he dropped his 6th album, Thug Matrimony, Married to the Streets. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 145,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Let's Go, featuring Twista and Lil Jon, was the biggest song of his career, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. The second single, Sugar Gimme Some, featuring Ludacris and CeeLo Green, reached number 20 on the Hot 100, which also has Lil Kim on the remix. For Trick Daddy, this would be the last of his hit-making days. In 2006, he dropped his 7th album, Backed by Thug Demand, which only peaked at number 48 on the Billboard 200. The lead single, Bet That, featuring Chamillionaire and Gold Rush, failed to chart on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Rick Ross. Before he got his start in music, he briefly worked as a correctional officer in the 90s. Was just putting that out there for a little comedy since some people use that against him. But anyways, back to the music. He started in the early 2000s doing some features here and there with names such as Trina and Eric Sermon. By the mid-2000s, he started gaining more traction in the underground and would sign a record deal with Slip and Slide Records, which came with a lot of anticipated hype. In 2006, at the age of 30, he dropped his debut album, Port of Miami, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 187,000 copies and went gold in 3 months. The lead single, Every Day I'm Hustling, 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 was a street anthem, reaching number 54 on the Hot 100. The remix of the song featured Jay-Z and Young Jeezy. The second single, Push It, reached number 57 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Missy Elliott. In 2005, she dropped her sixth album, The Cookbook. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 176,000 copies and went gold in 2 months. The lead single, Music Make You Lose Control, Music Make You Lose Control, featuring Sierra and Fat Man Scoop, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The final single, We Run This, reached number 48 on the Hot 100. Other than that, she was featured on Sierra's hit single, 1-2 Step, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. And to wrap up the B-list, we got LL Cool J. No matter how old he got, LL Cool J was still very cool, even in the mid-2000s. He too would also have crazy longevity in the game. He was very consistent. In 2004, he dropped his 10th album, The Definition. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 173,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Head Sprung, reached number 16 on the Hot 100. In 2006, he dropped his 11th album, Todd Smith, which is the shortened version of his government name. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 116,000 copies and went gold. One of the singles was another duet with Jennifer Lopez on Control Myself, which reached number 4 on the Hot 100. This was pretty much All I Have Part 2, but with a techno twist due to the African Bambaataa sample. Now for the C-list. First up, we got Slim Thug, another rapper from Houston, Texas, who came up in the same era as Chamillionaire, Paul Wall, and Mike Jones. In 2005, Slim Thug released his debut album, Already Platinum. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 130,000 copies, which was very impressive since the album had no hit singles. Even without a pop record, he still sold records like a boss. No pun intended. That same year, he would appear on the Hot 100 as a feature on Beyonce's hit single, Check On It, which topped the Hot 100. Next up, we got Method Man. After Wu-Tang's continued run in the early 2000s, the group would take a break, and Method Man would go back to dropping more solo albums. In 2004, he dropped his third album, To Cal Zero, the prequel, which was his first album in 6 years. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 164,000 copies and went gold. In 2006, he would drop his fourth album, 421, the day after. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 62,000 copies. Next on the C-list, we got Ghostface Killah. Just like Method Man, Ghostface Killah would also follow suit and drop more solo stuff. In 2004, he dropped his fourth album, the Pretty Tony album. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 69,000 copies. In 2006, he dropped his fifth album, Fish Scale. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 109,000 copies. This album was also critically acclaimed and was highly mentioned as one of the best rap albums of the year. One of the singles off the album, Back Like That, featuring Neo, was his biggest song as a solo act, reaching number 61 on the Hot 100. Next on the C-list, we got Damian Marley, a reggae artist who's one of the sons of the late Bob Marley. In the mid-2000s, Damian Marley would infiltrate the hip-hop market with his raw and authentic reggae sound. After signing a record deal with Universal, he dropped his third album, Welcome to Jamrock, in 2005. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 and number 4 on the R&B hip-hop albums chart, with first week sales of 86,000 copies and went gold. The lead single of the same name reached number 55 on the Hot 100. The song was also featured on the video game soundtracks for FIFA 06 and Midnight Club 3 Dub Edition. Another single off the album, Road to Zion, was a collab with Nas, which would be the starting point of more future collabs between the two. Next up, we got E40. He was popular in the mid to late 90s and went on a bit of a dry spell in the early 2000s, but by the mid 2000s, he would have a resurgence. In 2006, he dropped his 9th album, My Ghetto Report Card. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 94,000 copies, making it his highest charting album. It reached gold status and contained a couple major hits. The lead single, Tell Me When to Go, featuring Keek Da Sneak, reached number 35 on the Hot 100. The second single, You and Dat, featuring T-Pain and Candy Girl, reached number 13 on the Hot 100, which was his biggest song. He was also featured on Lil Jon's top 10 charting hit single, Snap Your Fingers, alongside Sean P. E40 was the oldest rapper popping at the time. Even though he was pushing 40 years old, he still fit right in with this newer wave of hip-hop. Next on the C-list, we got D4L, another southern hip-hop group from Atlanta, with Fabo, Mook B, Shawty Lo, and Stoney. In 2005, they dropped their first and only album, Down for Life, which is what D4L stands for. It debuted at number 22 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 40,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Laffy Taffy, was one of the biggest songs of 2005, topping the Hot 100, mostly due to its high amount of digital download sales. This song itself was also a product of the snap music era, a very simple and catchy song that made you want to snap your fingers. The second single, Bet You Can't Do It Like Me, didn't do nearly as well, reaching number 72 on the Hot 100. So as quickly as they first got hot, they flamed out just as fast, which is why I have them on the C-list for this era. Next up, we got J-Quan, who was another poppin' teenage rapper in the mid-2000s. After signing to So So Def, he dropped his debut single, Tipsy, in January 2004, a club anthem that talks about getting drunk, despite not even being old enough to drink or be in the club since he was only 17 when the song came out. Nevertheless, the song went crazy and was a major hit, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100.
3 months later, he dropped his debut album, Hood Hop, in April, which came out days after his 18th birthday. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 125,000 copies and went gold. The second single, You and Me, featuring Sadia, reached number 58 on the Hot 100. And personally, I think that song was slept on. In my opinion, I believe the reason why this song didn't reach its full potential is because it didn't have a music video behind it. The song was good enough to at least peak within the top 30 at best. You had a female vocalist on the hook to make it an R&B friendly song, and pretty sure it would have been easy to make a video for a song like this. I feel like the budget used for the Hood Hop music video should have been used for You and Me instead. I say that was a missed opportunity, but oh well, Jaquan still didn't flop at the end of the day, and that's all that matters. Next up, we got Common. After leaving MCA Records, he would team up with Kanye West and sign to his Good Music label. When it comes to Chicago hip-hop, this partnership was definitely one for the books. You got an OG and a rising superstar from the same city now playing on the same team. This move would give Common another boost in his career. In May 2005, he dropped his 6th album, B. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 185,000 copies and went gold. The album was also critically acclaimed as one of the best rap albums of the year. One of the singles, Go, featuring Kanye and John Mayer, appeared on the Hot 100, reaching number 79. Next on the C list, we got P.D. Pablo. After making some noise in the early 2000s, he would drop his second album, Still Writing in My Diary, second entry, in 2004. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 116,000 copies and went gold. The Lil Jon produced lead single, Freak a Leak, became his biggest song, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. The story behind this song was that the instrumental was going to be used for Usher's Yeah, but Lil Jon had forgotten that he had already gave it to P.D. Pablo in the first place. By then, it was too late to take it back, as it was already released, which then prompted Lil Jon to remake the beat for Yeah, which turned out to be an even bigger song than Freak a Leak. Outside of this, P.D. Pablo was featured on Sierra's chart-topping hit single, Goodies. Next up, we got Fabolous. In 2004, he dropped his 3rd album, Real Talk. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 179,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Breathe, reached number 10 on the Hot 100. The second single, Baby, featuring Mike Shorey, reached number 71 on the Hot 100. He was also featured on the remix of Jennifer Lopez's hit single, Get Right. Next on the C list, we got Ja Rule. Even in the mid-2000s, after 50 Cent pretty much made the world turn against him, Ja Rule still had his head above water. He was down, but not out, thanks to Fat Joe, who pulled the strings on getting him back on his feet again. Fat Joe would orchestrate the moves to get the features that Ja Rule needed for his hits. Also, Ja Rule's label, Murder Inc., had to change its name to The Inc., dropping the murder from its name after they suffered some setbacks in 2003 when their office got raided by the feds after being accused of funneling and laundering drug money from Kenneth Supreme McGriff, a known drug lord who had funded the label, which had also played a role in Ja Rule's downfall since he legally couldn't respond to 50 quick enough. With Supreme out of the picture, the label had to carry on and move forward. In 2004, Ja Rule dropped his 6th album, R.U.L.E. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 165,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Wonderful, featuring Ashanti and R. Kelly, reached number 5 on the Hot 100. The second single, New York, featuring Fat Joe and Jadakiss, reached number 27 on the Hot 100. The final single, Caught Up, featuring Lloyd, failed to chart on the Hot 100, but was still a popular hit in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. These results only prove that all love wasn't lost for Ja Rule. Outside of this, Ja Rule had some more movie roles in Shall We Dance and The Cookout. Next up, we got Ice Cube. Although he was busy doing more movies, Ice Cube still found the time and inspiration to get back in the booth and put out more music. In 2006, he dropped his 7th album, Laugh Now, Cry Later. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 144,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Why We Thugs, reached number 92 on the Hot 100. The second single, Go to Church, featuring Lil Jon and Snoop Dogg, failed to chart on the Hot 100, but was a fairly popular street single. This is also one of my personal favorite songs by him. That beat goes crazy. As for the movies he was in during this time period, he was in Torque, XXX State of the Union, Are We There Yet?, Beauty Shop, and Barbershop 2. Next up, we got Cameron. After reaching his peak in the early 2000s, he would start to decline just a little bit. In December 2004, he dropped his 4th album, Purple Haze. Cameron himself has mentioned this album as his most favorite album that he's ever done. It debuted at number 20 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 123,000 copies and went gold. One of the singles, Down and Out, featuring Kanye West and Selena Johnson, reached number 94 on the Hot 100. After this, Cameron would leave Rockefeller Records and signed a new partnership deal with Asylum Records. In May 2006, he dropped his 5th album, Kill a Season. With this album, he had more creative control and was the executive producer. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 114,000 copies. No hit single needed. Even without the hits, Cameron would still do numbers. Next up, we got Joel Santana. In November 2005, he dropped his 2nd album, What the Game's Been Missing. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 141,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Mic Check, was a street single for urban radio. The second single, There It Go, the whistle song, reached number 6 on the Hot 100, making it his first appearance on the chart as a lead artist, as well as the biggest song of his solo career. The third single, Oh Yes, reached number 56 on the Hot 100. That same year in 2005, he was also featured on Chris Brown's debut single, Run It, which topped the Hot 100. Looking back when this song first came out, it's funny how we knew who Joel Santana was, but didn't really know who Chris Brown was, since he was a brand new artist at the time who just came out of nowhere. Next up, we got Mace. After blowing up in the late 90s, he would retire from rap to become a pastor. He went from the booth to the pulpit. He went from the studio to the sanctuary. After a few years of preaching the gospel, Mace would eventually get the itch and make a comeback. In 2004, he dropped his third and most recent album, Welcome Back, which was his first album in 5 years. On this album, he would Will Smith it up and not use any profanity or any type of explicit content in his lyrics. The whole album would end up being clean and family-friendly rap songs. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 188,000 copies and went gold. The first single of the same name reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The second single, Breathe, Stretch, Shake, featuring Diddy, reached number 28 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got David Banner. After arriving on the scene in the early 2000s, David Banner would continue to ascend. In 2005, he dropped his fourth album, Certified. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 89,000 copies, which became his highest charting album. One of the singles, Play, was the biggest song of his career, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Mobb Deep. They would leave their label, Loud Records, and sign a new deal with Jive Records. In 2004, they dropped their sixth album, America's Nightmare. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 109,000 copies. The lead single, Got It Twisted, reached number 64 on the Hot 100. After this, Mobb Deep would switch labels again and sign with 50 Cent's G-Unit Records. In 2005, they appeared on the remix of Out of Control alongside 50 Cent, which reached number 6 on the Hot 100. In 2006, Mobb Deep would drop their 7th album, Blood Money. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 106,000 copies. None of the singles charted on the Hot 100, but will receive enough urban airplay to be popular in the streets, with the first single, Have a Party, featuring Nate Dogg and 50 Cent, and the second single, Put 'Em in Their Place. Next up, we got Baby Bash. After the success of his debut album, he would return in 2005 with his second album, Super Saucy. It debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 48,000 copies, making it his highest charting album. The lead single, Baby I'm Back, featuring Akon, reached number 19 on the Hot 100. Also in 2005, he would once again team up with Frankie J, this time as a feature on the hit single Obsession No Es Amor, which was a cover version of A Ventura's original song. It reached number 3 on the Hot 100. During this stretch of the 2000s, the Baby Bash Frankie J duo were quite the 1-2 punch. Next on the C list, we got Will Smith. His popularity as a rapper was already fading, while his popularity as an actor was already through the roof. He had already become one of the biggest names in Hollywood, but Will Smith still had the inspiration to get back in the booth and prove to the world that he still got it. In February 2005, he dropped a new single called Switch. This song would be considered his comeback hit, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100, making it his highest charting single since 1999. This was followed up a month later by the release of his fourth album, Lost and Found. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 98,000 copies and went gold. The second single, Party Starter, didn't do as well, failing to chart on the Hot 100, but did well in other parts of the world, charting decently well in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Next up, we got Cassidy. First got his start in the late 90s with a rap group called Larceny. They was discovered by Swizz Beatz' father and signed to Rough Riders' subsidiary label, TD Entertainment. They had appeared on one of the tracks for the platinum-selling compilation album, Ride or Die Volume 2 in 2000. A couple of years later, Cassidy would go solo and sign with Swizz Beatz' newly formed label, Full Surface Records. In 2003, he would begin recording for his debut album. The first single, Hotel, featuring R. Kelly, was released to Top 40 Radio in January 2004. The song blew up and became a global smash hit, reaching number 4 on the Hot 100. Following this, his debut album would finally be released in March, which was called Split Personality. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 118,000 copies and went gold in a month. The second single, Get No Better, featuring Mashonda, reached number 79 on the Hot 100. In 2005, Cassidy was back at it again with his second album, I'm a Hustler. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 93,000 copies. The lead single of the same name reached number 34 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Pitbull, another rapper of Latino descent who made a name for himself during this era. He had already been discovered in the early 2000s, but wasn't really in the right situation. He had signed to a label called Luke Records, but nothing ever materialized. The Pitbull that we know now wasn't the same type of rapper back then. He needed to be developed in order to make radio-friendly records. Back then, his style was very rough and rugged. The deal ended, but Pitbull was still determined to win. His manager introduced him to Lil Jon. The king of crunk was impressed by his talent and saw potential in him. After that, the two would get to work. Pitbull would then sign a deal with TVT Records, the same label that Lil Jon was signed to. In August 2004, he released his debut album, Miami, which is an acronym for Money is a Major Issue. It debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 55,000 copies and went gold in 8 months. The lead single, Kulo, featuring Lil Jon, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The song itself had gained its popularity due to the use of a very popular dancehall rhythm called Coolie Dance. that had been used by Nina Sky for their hit single, Move Your Body, which explains why both those songs sounded the same, but with two different styles. Nina Sky sung on the rhythm while using it for their single, and on the other hand, Pitbull rapped on it while he used it for his single. Following this, Pitbull would link up with Diddy for a new business venture. The two would partner up and launch a label called Bad Boy Latino in 2005. Under the new label, Pitbull released his second album, El Mariel, in October 2006. It debuted at number 17 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 48,000 copies. The lead single, Bojangles, reached number 91 on the Hot 100. The remix had the Yin Yang Twins on it. The second single, Hey Chico, Lengua Afuera, reached number 92 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Birdman. In 2005, he dropped his second album, Fast Money. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 65,000 copies, which became his highest charting solo album. However, it failed to reach gold status, since this was a much lesser commercial album compared to his previous album. But in 2006, he would get back to the hits. Teaming up with Lil Wayne, the two dropped a collab album called Like Father Like Son in October. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 176,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Stuntin' Like My Daddy, reached number 21 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Bubba Sparks. After his second album, Bubba Sparks would leave Interscope Records and signed a new deal with Virgin Records. In April 2006, he dropped his third album, The Charm. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 51,000 copies. Although it underperformed and failed to reach gold status, the lead single off the album, Miss New Booty featuring Yin Yang Twins and Mr. Collar Park, was a smash hit single, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100, which became the biggest song of his career, even bigger than Ugly. Next up, we got Young Dro. His come-up was a result of being in the group PSC with T.I. and a few others. Young Dro would break through as a solo artist in 2006 with the release of his debut album, Best Thang Smokin'. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 104,000 copies. The lead single, Shoulder Lean featuring T.I., would end up being a smash hit single, reaching number 10 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Jim Jones, 1/4 of the Dipset crew. Slowly but surely, Jim Jones would also come up as a solo artist during this time period. In 2004, he dropped his debut album, On My Way to Church. It debuted at number 18 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 44,000 copies. In 2005, he dropped his second album, Harlem, Diary of a Summer. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 74,000 copies. His album sales were increasing, but still no hits. However, that would all change in 2006 off his third album, Hustlers P.O.M.E., Product of My Environment. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 106,000 copies. The lead single, We Fly High, otherwise known as Ballin', was a major hit, reaching number 5 on the Hot 100, making it his biggest song. Next up, we got Jibbs, another teenage rapper who arrived on the scene during this time period. He was 16 years old when he first got his big break in 2006 with his debut single, Chain Hang Low, which reached number 7 on the Hot 100. Months later, he dropped his debut album, Jibbs featuring Jibbs. It debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 50,000 copies. The second single, King Kong featuring Chamillionaire, reached number 54 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Field Mob. After being signed to MCA Records for their first 2 albums during the early 2000s, they would leave the soon-to-be-defunct label and sign to Ludacris's Disturbing the Peace label in August 2005. They would also collab with Ludacris on a hit single called Georgia, which reached number 39 on the Hot 100. The single appeared on the compilation album, Ludacris Presents Disturbing the Peace, which was released in December 2005. In 2006, Field Mob dropped their third and still most recent album, Light Poles and Pine Trees. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 63,000 copies. The lead single, So What, featuring Sierra, became their biggest song to date, reaching number 10 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got DMX. After announcing that his 5th album, Grand Champ, would be his last, DMX became a free agent after finishing his deal with Def Jam. He was looking to negotiate a new contract with the label, but he was in debt with the label and still owed them millions. Jay-Z had also become the president of the label at the time. Both him and DMX never had a good working relationship in the past, which caused a bit of tension between the two. But despite that, Jay-Z cleared up the debt and allowed DMX to sign elsewhere. Def Jam was pretty much looking to move on from DMX around this time. They had signed Rihanna in 2005, who at the time was a brand new teenage pop singer, and in January 2006, they would trade DMX to Columbia Records in exchange for Nas, who was also a free agent once his contract was finished. DMX's first 5 albums had debuted at number 1 on the Billboard 200, making him the first ever artist in the history of music to do so. With his new deal, DMX was looking to continue that streak with the release of his 6th album, Year of the Dog again, but he would fall short. It came in at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 126,000 copies and failed to even reach gold status. Compared to his first 5 albums that reached number 1 and went platinum plus, this album was a dud. It's safe to say that DMX was past his prime at this point, which is why I have him on the C-list for this chapter. However, I really and truly liked the lead single, Lord Give Me a Sign, when it came out. To this day, it's one of my top 5 favorite DMX songs. That same year, DMX would also come out with his own reality show called DMX Soul of a Man, which had aired on BET. Next up, we got Trina. In 2005, she dropped her third album, Glamorous Life. It debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 77,000 copies, despite not reaching gold status. Off the album spawned the hit single, Here We Go Again, featuring Kelly Rowland, which reached number 17 on the Hot 100, making it her highest charting single. And to wrap up the C-list, we got Tony Yayo, who was the missing fourth member of G Unit. Due to weapon charges, he was incarcerated the same year their first album, Beg for Mercy, came out, although he was still visible on the cover. He would be released the following year, immediately signed to 50's G Unit Records, and finally launch his solo career. In May 2005, he came out with his first single, So Seductive, featuring 50 Cent. The song was a club banger and had reached number 48 on the Hot 100. A few months later, he dropped his debut album, Thoughts of a Predicate Felon, in August. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 214,000 copies. To this day, it's the only album he's ever released. Now for the D-list. Obi Trice, BG, UNK, Lil Kim, Lil Scrappy, Trillville, Lupe Fiasco, Bun B, Pimp C, Webby, Beanie Man, Jermaine Dupri, Exhibit, Dilated Peoples, Cypress Hill, Clips, Tech 9, Manny Fresh, Too Short, Nori, The Roots, Cry Mob, Lil Rob, Young Bloods, Remy Ma, Beanie Siegel, Shauna, 8Ball and MJ Jean, and Shine. Now for some other mentions. More Tupac posthumous releases. In 2004, Eminem would get Afena Shakur's blessing to be the executive producer for Tupac's next album. It would end up being released in December called Loyal to the Game, which was his 9th album overall. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 330,000 copies and went platinum. The album contained a couple singles, Thugs Get Lonely 2 featuring Nate Dogg and Ghetto Gospel. In 2006, his final album, Pac's Life, was released in November. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 159,000 copies. Even in death, his run would be extended another 10 years, which just goes to show what might have been if he was still alive. More Biggie posthumous releases. After his death in 1997, Biggie would only have 2 posthumous albums released. His first one was called Born Again, which had dropped in 99. The second one, Duets The Final Chapter, was released at the end of 2005. This album was entirely a remix album that contained a boatload of features from other rappers and R&B singers. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 438,000 copies and went platinum. The lead single, Nasty Girl, featuring Diddy, Nelly, Jagged Edge, and Avery Storm, was a global smash hit, reaching number 44 on the Hot 100 and charted very well in Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. John Cena. Even with a booming career in professional wrestling, the WWE superstar would also take a swing at the rap game as well. In 2005, he dropped a collab studio album called You Can't See Me alongside his cousin, The Trademark, who was an aspiring professional rapper at the time. The album was released through WWE Records with major label distribution by Columbia Records. It debuted at number 15 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 43,000 copies, which wasn't bad for a wrestler. Chapter 3, the late 2000s, starting with the A-list. First off, we got Kanye West. In 2007, both him and 50 Cent would engage in a historic album release battle, where both rappers released their respective upcoming albums on the same day to see who would outsell the other in the first week. Kanye was dropping his third album, Graduation, which is my personal favorite album by him, and 50 was also dropping his third album, Curtis. Leading up to the release date, both rappers had their hit singles locked and loaded to garner some promotion for their albums. For Kanye, in May 2007, he dropped the first single, Can't Tell Me Nothing, which reached number 43 on the Hot 100. In June 2007, he dropped the second single, Stronger, which ended up being a summer banger, topping the Hot 100, making it his third number 1 hit. September 11, 2007 was release day for both rappers. Kanye dropped Graduation, and 50 dropped Curtis. And the results would be, drumroll please, Kanye West being the winner. Graduation topped the Billboard 200, selling 957,000 copies in the first week, while Curtis came in at number 2 with first week sales of 691,000 copies. Graduation would end up going double platinum in less than 2 months. Years later, this would be looked at as one of the biggest moments ever in hip-hop history. This also marked a new era in hip-hop, with gangster rap now on the decline and alternative hip-hop starting to take over. More hit singles came out of Graduation after its release. The third single, Good Life, featuring T-Pain, reached number 7 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Flashing Lights, featuring Dwelly, reached number 29 on the Hot 100. The final single, Homecoming, featuring Chris Martin, reached number 68 on the Hot 100. In 2008, Kanye would quickly return with album number 4. In November, he dropped 808s and Heartbreak. This was his first album to not feature the signature mascot teddy bear on the cover. Due to the adversities he was facing in his personal life with the loss of his mother, Donda, who died a couple months after graduation dropped, and breaking up with his ex-fiancée, Alexis Pfeiffer. This made Kanye take a different approach for this next album. Also, this album would end up being a game changer, and arguably one of the most influential hip-hop albums of all time, due to the use of the 808 drum machine and the combination of new sounds of experimental R&B and synth pop into one project, which laid the groundwork for some future artists in the following decade. The album was also still a commercial success, topping the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 450,000 copies and went platinum in a month. The lead single, Love Lockdown, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The second single, How Could You Be So Heartless, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. The third single, Amazing, featuring Young Jeezy, reached number 81 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got 50 Cent. Although I had already mentioned that he got outsold by Kanye, I would still put him on the A-list for this chapter since he was a part of that big moment. Of course, as mentioned, his third album, Curtis, came in at number 2 behind Kanye, but still sold very well with first week sales of 691,000 copies, and quickly went platinum, selling over 1 million copies. The second single, Straight to the Bank, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The third single, I Get Money, reached number 20 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Ayo Technology, featuring Justin Timberlake and Timbaland, reached number 5 on the Hot 100. Although 50 had already put it out there that if he lost the battle to Kanye, he would end up retiring, but that would end up not being the case. In 2008, 50 was slated to drop his fourth album, Before I Self-Destruct, but the album would end up getting delayed for about a year. The lead single, Get Up, was released in October 2008 and reached number 43 on the Hot 100. The second single, I Get It In, was released in January 2009, which reached number 53 on the Hot 100. But both singles would end up being scrapped from the album due to the delay. In order to try offset this delay and feed the buzz, he had released a couple mixtapes called War Angel LP and Forever King. The official first single, Baby by Me, featuring Neo, would end up being released in September 2009. It reached number 28 on the Hot 100. Before I Self-Destruct would finally end up being released in November 2009. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 160,000 copies and went gold, which would be a huge decline and a far cry from the commercial success of his first 3 albums. Also in between his third and fourth album, G-Unit would reunite and drop their second album, TOS, Terminate on Sight, in 2008. But without Young Buck, as he was kicked out of the group due to internal conflict. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 102,000 copies, but failed to even reach gold status. The lead single, I Like the Way She Do It, only reached number 95 on the Hot 100. The second single, Rider Part 2, was just a street single for urban radio. Other than that, the same year he had another video game released called 50 Cent Blood on the Sand for PS3 and Xbox 360. Next up, we got Soulja Boy. An internet rap pioneer who's made history as the first ever rapper to blow up on YouTube, and it all started with Crank That. Back then, as a teenager in 2006, Soulja Boy produced the beat for the song on Fruity Loops, otherwise known as FL Studio, and would end up writing and recording the lyrics to the song at home. After that, he would post the song everywhere on websites such as SoundClick, and would disguise it as a 50 Cent song when he uploaded it to LimeWire, which was a popular P2P software that was used for downloading free music. Or should I say, stealing music. But hey, I was guilty of that back then as well. In February 2007, Soulja Boy then posted the song on both his YouTube page and his MySpace profile, with a low-budget instructional how-to video, which came with a dance. The song and the video would slowly start to catch fire and eventually ended up going viral, racking up a lot of views. The song was very catchy, had replay value, and came with an easy dance that everybody could do. This would then catch the attention of record producer/executive, Mr. Collar Park. He would then sign Soulja Boy to his label Collar Park Music, which then got a joint venture deal with Interscope Records. At the age of 17, this would help change Soulja Boy's life and jumpstart his rap career. In May 2007, Crank That was released commercially with a professionally done music video, and would end up being a global smash hit, and arguably the biggest song of the year, topping the Hot 100, and charting very high in Canada, Europe, Australia, and New Zealand. Literally, everybody and their grandma and grandpa was cranking that. Outside of the song's commercial success, a lot of remixes were being done to this song, such as Crank That Spider-Man, Crank That Mario, Crank That Luigi, Crank That Ryu, Crank That Batman, Crank That Roosevelt, Crank That Wolverine, Crank That Family Guy, Crank That This, Crank That That, the list goes on and on. All of this would then be followed up by the release of his debut album, SouljaBoyTellHim.com, in October 2007. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 117,000 copies and went platinum. The second single, Soulja Girl, featuring I-15, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The third single, Ya Trick Ya, featuring A-Rab, reached number 48 on the Hot 100. In December 2008, Soulja Boy would quickly follow up with his second album, I Soulja Boy Tell 'Em, but wouldn't do nearly as good. It debuted at number 43 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 46,000 copies, and failed to even reach gold status. despite containing a couple hits. The second single, Kiss Me Through the Phone, featuring Sammy, reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The third single, Turn My Swag On, reached number 19 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Jay-Z. In 2007, Jay-Z would drop his 10th album, American Gangster, which was a concept album inspired by the movie of the same name. This album would be a big improvement from his previous album, Kingdom Come. With American Gangster, Jay-Z took a different approach with the music. Instead of trying to make some catchy pop records, he leaned into a more hardcore sound. The album was critically acclaimed and has been referred to as a modern-day throwback, comparable to his first album, Reasonable Doubt. The album was also still a commercial success, topping the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 425,000 copies and quickly went platinum. The lead single, Blue Magic, reached number 55 on the Hot 100. The second single, Rock Boys and the Winner Is, reached number 63 on the Hot 100. In 2008, Jay-Z would begin recording for his 11th album, which would end up being called The Blueprint 3. With this album, he would get back to the hits. The Blueprint 3 was intended to be released in the fourth quarter, but would end up being delayed and reworked. The lead single, Swagger Like Us, featuring Kanye, T.I., and Lil Wayne, was released in September 2008, and had debuted and peaked at number 5 on the Hot 100, due to high digital download sales, but would end up being scrapped from the album. The second single, Jock and Jay-Z, Dope Boy Fresh, was released for Urban Radio, but would also be scrapped from the album. In June 2009, the first official single, DOA Death of Autotune, was released. It peaked at number 24 on the Hot 100. The second single, Run This Town, featuring Rihanna and Kanye, was released in August 2009. The song was a super smash hit, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100. A month later, the Blueprint 3 was finally released, completing the trilogy for the album series. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 476,000 copies and quickly went platinum. The third single, Empire State of Mind, featuring Alicia Keys, topped the Hot 100, making it Jay-Z's first ever number 1 hit as a lead artist, even at the age of 40. The fourth single, On to the Next One, featuring Swizz Beatz, reached number 37 on the Hot 100. The fifth single, Young Forever, featuring Mr. Hudson, reached number 10 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Eminem. While still on hiatus, Eminem's rap career at this time was up in the air as his personal life was beginning to crumble. He went into deep depression after his childhood friend and fellow rapper Proof got murdered. He would fall more heavy into drugs, start to gain weight from overeating unhealthy junk foods, and was in and out of rehab after nearly dying from a drug overdose. After seeking help from a counselor, he would begin an exercise program to get back into shape and would eventually start to get clean and sober in 2008. This would be a rebirth for Eminem at this point in his life and career as the new Eminem that we know of today. Shortly after this, Eminem had confirmed that he was back in the lab with Dr. Dre working on the next album, which had already been called Relapse. In December 2008, a brand new track called Number One had leaked on the internet off a mixtape called Fourth Quarter Pressure Part 2, hosted by Big Mike and DJ Neptune. This track would turn out to be an unfinished version of a new single called Crack a Bottle. The final version leaked on the internet the following month. This version would end up featuring Dr. Dre and 50 Cent. This made some noise on the internet and was hyped up as Eminem's comeback single and the potential first single for Relapse, but was later confirmed to just be a promo single. However, the song was still released commercially in February 2009. It would break the digital download sales record, debuting at number 1 on the Hot 100, even without a music video to roll it out with. This would be his second number 1 hit. The official first single, We Made You, would be released in April 2009. It reached number 9 on the Hot 100. In May 2009, Relapse would finally be released, making it his first album in 5 years. It was also one of the most highly anticipated albums of the year. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 608,000 copies and quickly went double platinum. The second single, 3 AM, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. The third single, Old Time's Sake, featuring Dr. Dre, reached number 25 on the Hot 100. The fourth and final single, Beautiful, reached number 17 on the Hot 100. In December 2009, the album was re-released as Relapse the Refill, which included 7 new tracks. In between this, Eminem was featured on a hit single called Forever, alongside Drake, Kanye, and Lil Wayne, where Eminem goes last on the song and clearly has the best verse on the song as he absolutely destroys it with his new and improved ultra-fast rapping flow and sharp lyrics. At this point, Eminem was letting it known that Slim Shady was back, and back again. Next up, we got Lil Wayne. Around this time, Lil Wayne would reach his prime as his career was already starting to head in an upward trajectory. Lil Wayne would also become a label owner, starting up Young Money Entertainment. Before dropping his next album, The Carter 3, he would drop some mixtapes and EPs to feed the streets and create some buzz. In April 2007, he dropped a mixtape called The Drought 3. This mixtape was critically acclaimed and made the Rolling Stones Top 50 Albums of the Year list at number 27. In December 2007, he dropped an EP called The Leak, which was a 5-track EP. In 2008, Lil Wayne would dominate and have a monster year. In March, he released a new single called Lollipop featuring Static Major, which was the first single off the Carter 3. It topped the Hot 100, making it Lil Wayne's first ever number 1 hit. The second single, A Milli, was released the following month. It reached number 6 on the Hot 100. Following this, the Carter 3 was finally released in the month of June. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 1 million copies, making it his first #1 album and already his best-selling album. This also made him the third rapper to sell 1 million the first week after Eminem and 50 Cent. It would go triple platinum in 8 months. The album was also critically acclaimed as the best rap album of the year. The third single, Got Money featuring T-Pain, reached number 10 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Mrs. Officer featuring Bobby V, reached number 16 on the Hot 100. Thanks to this album, in 2009, Lil Wayne would become a Grammy Award winner for the first time, winning Best Rap Album, Best Rap Solo Performance, and Best Rap Song. At this time, Lil Wayne had reached new heights and became an all-around superstar. Later that year in December, a new compilation album called We Are Young Money was released on behalf of his label, which featured contributions from the artists that he had signed to Young Money, such as Drake, Nicki Minaj, Mac Main, Gutta Gutta, Lil Twist, Lil Chucky, Tyga, and a few more. The album debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 142,000 copies and went gold in a few months. The lead single, Every Girl, reached number 10 on the Hot 100. The second single, Bedrock featuring Lloyd, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got T.I. In July 2007, he dropped his 5th album, T.I. vs. T.I.P. The concept of the album was to showcase two sides of the rapper, with T.I. being the corporate businessman and T.I.P. being a street persona. The album topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 470,000 copies and went platinum. The lead single, Big Things Poppin', Do It, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. The second single, You Know What It Is, featuring Wyclef Jean, reached number 34 on the Hot 100. A few months later after the album release, T.I. would find himself in some legal trouble, as he was charged with 2 felonies after being arrested for illegal possession of firearms and was facing up to 10 years in prison, putting both his career and his freedom in jeopardy. He would post bond, but after awaiting a trial for a suppression hearing, he would be placed on temporary house arrest after pleading guilty. While on house arrest, he would start penning songs for his next album, which would be titled Paper Trail. For this album, he would actually write the songs on paper, which is something he hadn't done since his first album. After putting pen to paper, he would then start recording tracks for the album, keeping himself busy for the time being. With Paper Trail, T.I. would actually pivot into making more positive rap music instead of rapping about violence and drug dealing like what he mostly did in his previous albums. In April 2008, he released a promo single called No Matter What, which reached number 72 on the Hot 100. 3 months later, the official lead single of the album, Whatever You Like, topped the Hot 100, making it T.I.'s first ever #1 hit as a lead artist. A few months after that, the next single, Live Your Life, featuring Rihanna, also topped the Hot 100, making it back-to-back #1 hits for T.I. He was just on fire at this point. A couple weeks after the single drop, Paper Trail was finally released. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 568,000 copies and quickly went double platinum, making it his best-selling album. The follow-up single, Dead and Gone, featuring Justin Timberlake, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. Following the success of the album, T.I. would go back to handling his case. He would take a plea deal and have a shorter prison sentence of 1 year and 1 day. He would eventually get released early for good behavior. By this time, he had released an EP called Paper Trail, Case Closed in August 2009. Which contained a couple more hit singles, such as Remember Me featuring Mary J. Blige, which reached number 29 on the Hot 100, and Hell of a Life, which reached number 54 on the Hot 100. Outside of this, T.I. also made his first ever video game appearance in 2007 with Def Jam Icon, where he also appears on the front cover of the video game. Next up, we got Flo Rida, who was a brand new artist during this time. Before his come-up, he was already working with other artists such as Lil Jon, Rick Ross, Trina, and a few others. He had signed a deal with an independent label called Oh Boy Entertainment, which then got a joint venture deal with Atlantic Records. In October 2007, he dropped his debut single called Low featuring T-Pain. The song was an instant global smash hit, topping the Hot 100 and also topping the charts in other parts of the world as well. In February 2008, he dropped a follow-up single called Elevator featuring Timbaland, which reached number 16 on the Hot 100. A month later, his debut album, Mail on Sunday, was finally released. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 86,000 copies. The third single off the album, In the Ayer, featuring will.i.am, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. In 2009, Flo Rida would quickly drop his second album, Roots, in March, just 12 months after his debut album. The title Roots is an acronym for Root of Overcoming the Struggle. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 55,000 copies. The lead single, Right Round, featuring Kesha, topped the Hot 100, making it his second #1 hit already. The second single, Shown, featuring Pleasure P, reached number 57 on the Hot 100. The third single, Sugar, featuring Winter, reached number 5 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, Jump, featuring Nelly Furtado, reached number 54 on the Hot 100. The final single, Beyond You, featuring Neo, reached number 19 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Black Eyed Peas. The group had gone on hiatus after dropping their fourth album in 2005. During this hiatus, will.i.am would drop a solo album, and Fergie would branch off as a solo act with her multi-platinum selling debut album, The Duchess, which will.i.am helped produce. In 2009, the group would come back for album number 5. With this album, they would change their musical style and start to lean in towards an EDM sound. In February, they dropped the first single, Boom Boom Pow, which became a massive global hit, topping the Hot 100, making it their first ever #1 hit, and was also #1 in 6 other countries. 4 months later, the 5th album was finally released, which was called The END, which in long form is called The Energy Never Dies. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 304,000 copies and went double platinum, making it their first ever #1 album. The new EDM sound really ended up working out for them. The second single, I Got a Feeling, also topped the Hot 100, making it back-to-back #1 hit singles for the group. The third single, Meet Me Halfway, reached number 7 on the Hot 100. The fourth single, I'ma Be, also topped the Hot 100, making it 3 #1 hits off the album. The final single, Rock That Body, reached number 9 on the Hot 100. And to wrap up the A-list, we got Timbaland, who as a producer was largely responsible for creating a lot of hits throughout the early and mid-2000s with the likes of Aaliyah, Nelly Furtado, Missy Elliott, Jay-Z, Justin Timberlake, and the list goes on. But in the late 2000s, he would take yet another leap as a solo artist and drop a full album called Shock Value in 2007, making it his first solo album in almost 10 years. The album debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 138,000 copies and went platinum. This album also contained some bangers. The lead single, Give It To Me, featuring Nelly Furtado and Justin Timberlake, topped the Hot 100. The second single, The Way I Are, featuring Carrie Hilson and D.O.E., reached number 3 on the Hot 100. The third single, It's Too Late to Apologize, with One Republic, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. In 2009, Timbaland would drop the sequel to the album, Shock Value 2, which didn't do as well. It debuted at number 36 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 37,000 copies, and failed to even reach gold status, but still contained some hits. The second single, Say Something, featuring Drake, reached number 23 on the Hot 100. The follow-up single, Carry Out, featuring Justin Timberlake, reached number 11 on the Hot 100. The final single, If We Ever Meet Again, featuring Katy Perry, reached number 37 on the Hot 100. Now for the B-list. First up, we got The Game. In 2008, he dropped his third album, LAX. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 238,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Game's Pain, featuring Keisha Cole, reached number 75 on the Hot 100. The third single, My Life, featuring Lil Wayne, reached number 21 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Nas. In 2008, he dropped his 9th album, which would end up being untitled, due to the controversy of the original title, which was going to be called The N-Word, but with the ER at the end. According to Nas, the reasoning behind that title was in an attempt to take away power from that word. Once this original title was publicly announced, it had gotten mostly positive responses by his peers in the hip-hop community, but received some backlash by others. Despite this, the label was actually in full support of the album title and were totally understanding of Nas's vision for this album. However, for markability purposes, he would change it and leave it untitled by stating, "The people will always know what the real title of this album is and what to call it." Also, on the iTunes store, the album would be self-titled. Despite all of this controversy, the album still did well, topping the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 187,000 copies and went gold, making it his 4th #1 album. It was also critically acclaimed as one of the best rap albums of the year. The lead single, Hero, featuring Carrie Hilson, reached number 97 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Ludacris. In 2008, he dropped his 7th album, Theater of the Mind, which is my personal favorite album by him. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 214,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, What Them Girls Like, featuring Chris Brown and Sean Garrett, reached number 33 on the Hot 100. The follow-up single, One More Drink, featuring T-Pain, reached number 24 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Drake. Coming straight out of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. At this time, Drake was already on TV as an actor on a show called Degrassi, but was also starting to make a little noise as an unsigned artist. In September 2007, he dropped his second mixtape called Comeback Season. This mixtape contained some remixes, freestyles, and original tracks with some notable features. One of the tracks off the mixtape, called Replacement Girl, featuring Trey Songz, would end up being released as his debut single, along with a music video. Overall, this mixtape would help him get discovered and eventually land him the opportunity to go on tour with Lil Wayne. The two would end up working together as well. In February 2009, Drake would drop his third mixtape called So Far Gone. The mixtape was critically acclaimed and received a lot of praise for its atmospheric production and vulnerable lyricism. Despite the mixtape being self-released for free digital downloads, this would be a game changer for Drake in his career, as it would finally put him on the map as the next big thing in hip-hop. One of the tracks off the mixtape called Best I Ever Had was chosen as the first single, and would end up being a super smash hit, reaching number 2 on the Hot 100. The second single would end up being Successful, featuring Trey Songz and Lil Wayne, which reached number 17 on the Hot 100. Following this newfound success, major labels would end up being in a bidding war for Drake, but ultimately he would end up signing with Lil Wayne's Young Money Entertainment. Months later, So Far Gone would end up being commercially released as an EP in September. It was condensed to 7 tracks, with 5 tracks off the original mixtape, as well as 2 new songs. The EP debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 73,000 copies. Following this, Drake would drop another hit single called Forever alongside Kanye, Lil Wayne, and Eminem, which reached number 8 on the Hot 100. The song was also used for the soundtrack to LeBron's documentary film, More Than a Game. Next up, we got Common. In 2007, he dropped his 7th album, Finding Forever. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 155,000 copies and went gold despite having no hit singles. This was also Common's first ever number 1 album. In 2008, he would quickly follow that up with his 8th album, Universal Mind Control, but didn't do as well. It debuted at number 12 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 81,000 copies and failed to reach gold status. The lead single of the same name, featuring Pharrell, reached number 62 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Plies, who has more recently become known for his funny Instagram videos. But way before social media, Plies had been first discovered as a rapper while making music with his stepbrother, who was also a record executive that was able to give him some connections in the music industry. With his stepbrother's help, he had signed to Slip and Slide Records in 2004. But it wouldn't be until 2007 when Plies would finally get his big break at the age of 31. In July of that year, he dropped his debut single, Shoddy, featuring T-Pain. The song instantly became a smash hit, reaching number 9 on the Hot 100. The following month, his debut album, The Real Testament, was finally released. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 96,000 copies and went gold in 6 months. The second single, Hypnotize, featuring Akon, reached number 14 on the Hot 100. In 2008, Plies would keep the music coming and flood the market. In June of that year, he quickly dropped his second album, Definition of Real. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 214,000 copies and went gold in 2 months. The lead single, Bust It Baby Part 2 featuring Neo, reached number 7 on the Hot 100, making it his highest charting single. The follow-up single, Please Excuse My Hands featuring Jamie Foxx, reached number 66 on the Hot 100. In December, he dropped his 3rd album, The Realist, making it his 3rd album in 14 months. It debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 114,000 copies. The lead single, Put It On Ya, featuring Chris J, reached number 31 on the Hot 100. The final single, Want It, Need It, featuring Ashanti, reached number 96 on the Hot 100. During this newfound fame, the internet would start this infamous rumor of both him and gospel musician Kirk Franklin possibly being related as brothers, due to their resemblance. Not gonna lie, they kinda do look alike if you ask me. Next up, we got Pitbull. In 2007, he dropped his 3rd album, The Boat Lift. It debuted at number 50 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 22,000 copies. The lead single, Go Girl, featuring Trina and Young Boss, reached number 83 on the Hot 100. The second single, The Anthem, featuring Lil Jon, reached number 36 on the Hot 100. In 2009, he dropped his 4th album, Pitbull starring in Revolution. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 41,000 copies. This album would contain some major hit singles that would help give Pitbull a boost in his career. The lead single, Crazy, featuring Lil Jon, reached number 30 on the Hot 100. The second single, I Know You Want Me, Calle Ocho, reached number 2 on the Hot 100. The third single, Hotel Room Service, reached number 8 on the Hot 100. The final single, Shut It Down, featuring Akon, reached number 42 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Rick Ross. In 2008, he dropped his 2nd album, Trilla. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 198,000 copies and went gold. The second single, The Boss, featuring T-Pain, reached number 17 on the Hot 100, making it his highest charting single to date. The follow-up single, Here I Am, featuring Nelly and Avery Storm, reached number 41 on the Hot 100. Following the release of this album, Rick Ross would start up his Maybach Music Group label as an imprint under Def Jam. In 2009, Rick Ross would drop his 3rd album, Deeper Than Rap. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 158,000 copies, making him one of the very few rappers to have their first 3 albums debut at number 1. The second single, Magnificent, featuring John Legend, which is my personal favorite, reached number 62 on the Hot 100. The final single, Maybach Music 2, featuring Kanye, T-Pain, and Lil Wayne, reached number 92 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got UGK. This southern hip-hop duo from Texas that consists of Bun B and Pimp C started off in the 90s, but were able to have some longevity a decade later. After a 6-year hiatus, they were back by popular demand in 2007 with the release of their 5th album, Underground Kings, which topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 160,000 copies, making it their first #1 album. One of the singles, International Players Anthem, I Choose You, featuring Outkast, reached number 70 on the Hot 100. The song had received a Grammy nomination for Best Rap Song. Also, Andre 3000's verse at the beginning has been considered a top-tier verse in hip-hop history. Sadly, months later after the album's release, Pimp C passed away in December 2007, just a few weeks before his 34th birthday, due to drug usage and sleep apnea. In 2009, UGK would release their 6th and final album, UGK for Life, as a dedication to the late Pimp C. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 77,000 copies, marking the end of an era. Next up, we got Fabolous. In 2007, he dropped his 4th album, From Nothing to Something. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 159,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Diamonds featuring Young Jeezy, reached number 83 on the Hot 100. The third single, Make Me Better featuring Neo, reached number 8 on the Hot 100. The final single, Baby Don't Go featuring T-Pain and Jermaine Dupri, reached number 23 on the Hot 100. In 2009, he would follow up with his 5th album, Loso's Way. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 99,000 copies, making it his first ever #1 album. The lead single, Throw It in the Bag featuring The Dream, reached number 14 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Young Jeezy. By this time, Young Jeezy had formed a rap group with Blood Raw and Slick Pullum called USDA, which stands for United Street Dope Boys of America. In 2007, they dropped their first and only album, Cold Summer, which had intended to be a mixtape. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 95,000 copies. The album contained a couple street singles such as Corporate Thuggin' and White Girl. In 2008, Young Jeezy was featured on Usher's chart-topping hit single, Love in This Club, making it his first ever #1 hit. Later on in the year, Young Jeezy would drop his 3rd album, The Recession. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 260,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Put On, featuring Kanye, reached number 12 on the Hot 100. One of the other singles, My President, featuring Nas, reached number 53 on the Hot 100. This was a very special song for 2 reasons. It was an early celebration of Barack Obama's upcoming presidential victory, and leading up to this collaboration, both artists had been feuding after Young Jeezy took offense to Nas's Hip Hop Is Dead album title. After this, the two would finally make peace with each other. And to wrap up the B-list, we got Mims, who after a few years of putting in work through features and remixes with other artists, was eventually able to secure a record deal with EMI and Capitol Records, and then finally blow up in the late 2000s. In December 2006, he had dropped his debut single, This Is Why I'm Hot, which slowly rose up the charts due to airplay. By March 2007, the song was released commercially on iTunes and would help the song skyrocket to #1 on the Hot 100, making it one of the biggest songs of the year, and also making him one of the very few rappers to have their debut single reach #1 on the chart. The song also did well internationally. This was then followed up by the release of his debut album, Music Is My Savior, making an acronym out of his rap name. The momentum of This Is Why I'm Hot didn't quite help the album, as it debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 78,000 copies and failed to even reach gold status. The second single, Like This, featuring Rashida, reached number 32 on the Hot 100. In 2009, he dropped his second and most recent album, Guilt. It debuted at number 53 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 12,000 copies. The lead single, Move, If You Wanna, reached number 61 on the Hot 100. Hold up, before we get into the C list, I'm forgetting somebody. Next on the B list, we got Pretty Ricky. In 2007, the group would reach their peak with the release of their second album, Late Night Special. It topped the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 132,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, On the Hotline, reached number 12 on the Hot 100. After this, the group would start to fall off. Pleasure P, who was the lone singer of the group, would end up leaving the group to embark on a solo career. They would replace him with another singer named Lingerie. Why that name though? Anyways, in 2008, the group was working on a next album called 80s Babies, but the album would end up being shelved and unreleased due to leaking and creative differences. The group would then leave Atlantic Records to sign elsewhere. In 2009, they would end up finally dropping a follow-up album which was self-titled, but it would flop hard. It debuted at number 97 on the Billboard 200 and no hits whatsoever. This would be the last album they would ever release. Now for the C list. First up, we got MIA, a British female rapper/singer of Sri Lankan descent. Already signed to Interscope with an international following, she dropped her second album, Kala, in August 2007. It debuted at number 18 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 29,000 copies before eventually falling off the charts. However, the album's 4th single, Paper Planes, released in February 2008, would shake things up. The song was a sleeper at first, but then months later would gain popularity and reach number 4 on the Hot 100, helping her cross over to the US mainstream market. This would also bring momentum to the album sales of Kala. The song would also end up being sampled in a mega hit single called Swagger Like Us by Jay-Z, T.I., Kanye, and Lil Wayne. She had also joined them for the live performance of the song at the 2009 Grammys. Next up, we got Baby Bash. In 2007, he dropped his third album, Cyclone. It debuted at number 30 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 26,000 copies. The lead single of the same name featuring T-Pain reached number 7 on the Hot 100. The second single, What Is It, featuring Sean Kingston, reached number 57 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Young Jock. In 2007, he was featured on T-Pain's chart-topping hit single, Buy You a Drink. Later that year, he dropped his second and most recent album, Hustlenomics. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 70,000 copies, but failed to reach gold status. The lead single, Coffee Shop, featuring Gorilla Zoe, reached number 78 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Kid Cudi, who at this time was a brand new artist. How he got on was through connections with Kanye West. He had met Kanye in 2006 a couple times in a retail store in New York City and offered him his music, but came with no guarantees. By this time, Kid Cudi was already signed to an indie label called Fool's Gold Records. In February 2008, he released a new single called Day and Night. This would be included on his debut mixtape called A Kid Named Cudi, which would be released in July. This body of work caught the attention of Kanye. He was impressed with the mixtape and would sign Kid Cudi to his Good Music label. Kid Cudi would then get to work for his debut album. The song Day and Night would end up being chosen as the first single and would remain a sleeper for months, but would then catch fire in 2009. In January, it debuted at number 88 on the Hot 100, and a few months later would reach number 3, making it his highest charting single at the time. The song also came with an EDM remix by an Italian production duo called The Crookers, which helped the song get played in the clubs. In April 2009, the second single, Make Her Say, featuring Kanye and Common, reached number 43 on the Hot 100. In September, Kid Cudi's debut album, Man on the Moon, The End of the Day, was finally released to high anticipation. The album debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 104,000 copies. The album was also critically acclaimed as one of the best hip-hop debut albums ever made. The third single, Pursuit of Happiness, featuring MGMT and Rat-A-Tat, reached number 59 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Bone Thugs and Harmony. Up until this point, the group had been on a dry spell the last few years and also going through changes with Bizzy Bone leaving the group and going solo. The 4-man group was now down to a 3-man group. This hip-hop powerhouse from the 90s was struggling to stay relevant in the 2000s. But despite all this, the group would miraculously have a resurgence in this latter part of the decade. This was first sparked in 2006 via Crazy Bones' feature on Chamillionaire's #1 smash hit single, Ridin' Dirty. That same year, the group would sign a new deal with Interscope through Swizz Beatz' Full Surface Records label. In February 2007, they released a new single called I Tried, featuring Akon. This song would end up being their comeback hit, reaching number 6 on the Hot 100, making it their highest charting single in 10 years. 3 months later, this would be followed up by the release of their 7th album, Strength and Royalty. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 119,000 copies and went gold. Even without Bizzy Bone, the group was able to prove themselves to this era that they still got it and pull off arguably one of the biggest comebacks in hip-hop history. Next up, we got Asher Roth, another brand new artist during this era. How he first got on was through MySpace after sending a friend request to a promoter named Scooter Braun, who used to work with Jermaine Dupri. In 2008, Asher Roth would then leave his hometown of Morrisville, Pennsylvania, and move to Atlanta to pursue a full-time rap career and sign with Scooter's indie label, Schoolboy Records. As he worked his way up and started getting some buzz, he would eventually start getting offers from a few major labels. He would end up signing a joint venture deal between Schoolboy Records and SRC Universal. In January 2009, he dropped his debut single, I Love College, and the song instantly became a smash hit, reaching number 12 on the Hot 100. 3 months later, he would drop his debut album, Asleep in the Bread Aisle. It debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 65,000 copies. Next up, we got Nelly, who once dominated in the early and mid-2000s was slowly starting to fall off around this time, which is why I have him on the C-list for this chapter. In 2007, he would start working on his 5th album, Brass Knuckles, but would struggle to create the mega hits that he used to make. That same year, he dropped a new single called What's Your Name, which only reached number 43 on the Hot 100. This was intended to be the first single off the album, but would ultimately just be included as a bonus track on the Japanese version. In April 2008, the official first single, Party People featuring Fergie, was released, reaching number 40 on the Hot 100. The follow-up single, Body on Me featuring Akon and Ashanti, reached number 42 on the Hot 100. The third single, Stepped on My J's featuring Ciara and Jermaine Dupri, reached number 90 on the Hot 100. In September, Brass Knuckles was finally released. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 83,000 copies and went gold, ending his platinum streak. Next up, we got DJ Khaled, who has now been referred to as the Quincy Jones of hip-hop. His run in the industry started in 2006 with his debut album called Listen, the album, after signing to Fat Joe's Terror Squad label. In the late 2000s, DJ Khaled would get to work and start establishing his catalog of anthems. In 2007, he dropped his second album, We the Best. It debuted at number 8 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 79,000 copies. The lead single, We Taking Over, featuring Akon, T.I., Rick Ross, Fat Joe, Birdman, and Lil Wayne, reached number 28 on the Hot 100. The second single, I'm So Hood, featuring T-Pain, Trick Daddy, Rick Ross, and Plies, reached number 19 on the Hot 100. In 2008, DJ Khaled would quickly drop his third album, Be Global. It debuted at number 7 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 59,000 copies. The lead single, Out Here Grindin', featuring Akon, Rick Ross, Trick Daddy, Young Jeezy, Lil Boosie, Ace Hood, and Lil Wayne, reached number 38 on the Hot 100. The second single, Go Hard, featuring Kanye and T-Pain, reached number 69 on the Hot 100. Next on the C list, we got Snoop Dogg. In 2008, he dropped his 9th album, Ego Trippin'. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 137,000 copies. The lead single, Sensual Seduction, reached number 7 on the Hot 100. In 2009, he dropped his 10th album, Malice in Wonderland. It debuted at number 23 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 61,000 copies. The lead single, Gangsta Love, featuring The Dream, reached number 35 on the Hot 100. The second single, I Wanna Rock, reached number 41 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Lupe Fiasco. In 2007, he dropped his second album, The Cool. It debuted at number 15 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 143,000 copies, peaked at number 14 the following week, and went gold. The lead single, Superstar, featuring Matthew Santos, reached number 10 on the Hot 100, becoming his mainstream breakthrough hit. Next on the C list, we got Cardinal Offishall. As a Canadian, I must proudly say, Toronto is in the building for this chapter. By this time, Cardinal Offishall was already a well-known MC in his city and throughout Canada, but had yet to cross over to the US and break through internationally. However, in 2007, he would finally get that opportunity to do so after signing a distribution deal with Akon's Con Live Distribution in partnership with his Black Jays label, with the Interscope machine behind him. In March 2008, he released a new single called Dangerous featuring Akon. The song first made noise in Canada, debuting at number 9 on the Billboard Canadian Hot 100, before ultimately reaching number 2. This would also translate to the US charts, reaching number 5 on the Hot 100 by the summer, making him the first ever Canadian hip-hop artist to chart on the Hot 100. The song also did well internationally, charting high in Europe. Up until this point, no rapper from Canada, let alone Toronto, had a song this big. This would be followed up by the release of his 4th album, Not For Sale, in September. It debuted at number 40 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 11,000 copies, making it the highest charting album on Billboard by a Canadian rapper at the time. In 2009, he was featured on Akon's hit single, Beautiful, alongside Kobe O'Donis, which reached number 19 on the Hot 100, helping him enjoy some more mainstream success in the US market. Next up, we got Rich Boy, one of the one-hit wonders from this decade. He was first studying to become an engineer while in university, but dropped out to become a rapper. And luckily, that would end up working out for him, as he got discovered by super producer Polo the Don and signed to his label, Zone 4 Records, through Interscope. In August 2006, he dropped his debut single, Throw Some D's on it, featuring Polo the Don. The song was a sleeper at first, but by spring 2007, the song would blow up and become a massive hit, reaching number 6 on the Hot 100. His self-titled debut album will be finally released in March 2007. It debuted at number 3 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 112,000 copies. Next on the C list, we got Shot Boys. This three-man group from Atlanta is well known for their 2007 smash hit single, Party Like a Rockstar, which reached number 2 on the Hot 100. This will be included on their debut album, Rockstar Mentality. It debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 52,000 copies. Next up, we got Hurricane Chris. Already signed by the time he was in high school, Hurricane Chris would start to launch his career in 2007 at the age of 18. In April of that year, he dropped his debut single, Hey Baby, which turned out to be a smash hit, reaching number 7 on the Hot 100. The song had a catchy beat, a catchy hook, which came with a hand clap. The song also had a remix featuring The Game, Lil Boosie, E40, Birdman, Angie Locke, and Jadakiss, known as the Ratchet Remix. Before his debut album, a second single called The Hand Clap featuring Big Papa of Ratchet City reached number 72 on the Hot 100. This would then be followed up by the release of the debut album, 5150 Ratchet. It debuted at number 24 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 26,000 copies. In 2009, he would follow up with album number 2. In March, he dropped the lead single, Halle Berry, She's Fine, which reached number 52 on the Hot 100, but unfortunately couldn't keep the hits coming after this. Months later, after some delays, his second and most recent album, Unleashed, was released in December, and the album was a huge flop, failing to even chart on the Billboard 200. Next up, we got Bow Wow. In December 2007, both him and Omarion would team up and drop a collab album called Face Off. It debuted at number 11 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 107,000 copies and went gold. The lead single, Girlfriend, reached number 33 on the Hot 100. In 2009, Bow Wow would drop his 6th and still most recent album, New Jack City 2, in March. Compared to his previous albums, this one would underperform as it debuted at number 16 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 31,000 copies, and failed to even reach gold status. The lead single, You Can Get It All, featuring Jonte Austin, reached number 55 on the Hot 100. On the deluxe version of the album was a 2008 single called Marco Polo featuring Soulja Boy, which reached number 66 on the Hot 100. Next on the C list we got Fat Joe. In 2008, he dropped his 8th album, The Elephant in the Room. It debuted at number 6 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 47,000 copies. The lead single, I Won't Tell, featuring Jay Holiday, reached number 37 on the Hot 100. In 2009, he would follow up with his 9th album, Jose 2, a sequel to his 2001 platinum-selling album, but it only debuted at number 73 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 8,300 copies and no hit singles. Next up, we got 3 6 Mafia. Following the Oscar win in 2006, the group had now become a duo after Crunchy Black left the group, with now just DJ Paul and Juicy J left to continue the legacy. They would start working on their 9th album, Last to Walk. In January 2007, they dropped a new single called Dope Boy Fresh, which reached number 54 on the Hot 100, but would end up not making the album as they started going in a different direction with the music. In March 2008, they dropped the official first single, Lolly Lolly Pop That Body, featuring Project Pat, Young D, and Superpower, which reached number 18 on the Hot 100. This song was different from their old traditional sound as they were leaning towards a more electro-pop type of sound. Following this, the album, Last to Walk, was finally released in June. Despite having a huge hit, the album underperformed as it debuted at number 5 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 77,000 copies and failed to even reach gold status. At this point, it had seemed like their fan base wasn't really rocking with the new pop sound that they were chasing. After this, the group would no longer release any more albums. Next up, we got Young Berg, who is now a well-known producer who goes by Hitmaker. Back in his rapping days, he had a nice little run of making some hits. After making some local noise, he had signed a deal with Epic Records and dropped his first project, a 6-track EP called Almost Famous, the Sexy Lady EP, in 2007. It debuted at number 32 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 20,000 copies. The lead single, Sexy Lady featuring Junior, reached number 18 on the Hot 100. In 2008, he was featured on Ray J's super smash hit single, Sexy Can I, which reached number 3 on the Hot 100. Later that same year, Youngberg would drop his debut album, Look What You Made Me. It debuted at number 20 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 19,000 copies. One of the singles, The Business, featuring Kasha, reached number 33 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Lil Mama, another young teenage rapper during this time who was discovered early and signed with a major label, who would also blow up during this era. In June 2007, she dropped her debut single, Lip Gloss, which instantly became a smash hit, reaching number 10 on the Hot 100. What you know about me? What you know about me? This would serve as the lead single for her upcoming debut album, but will be delayed for almost a whole year. In January 2008, the third single, Shawty Get Loose, featuring T-Pain and Chris Brown, was another smash hit, doing just as well as the first one, reaching number 10 on the Hot 100. In April 2008, her debut album, VYP, Voice of the Young People, was finally released but fell short of expectations. It debuted at number 25 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of only 19,000 copies and failed to even reach gold status. After this, Lil Mama would publicly call out her label, Jive Records, for not promoting her record properly. This would end up being her only album ever released, as her planned second album never saw the light of day. Outside of this, Lil Mama also worked as one of the judges on a very popular dance competition show called America's Best Dance Crew. Next up, we got Gym Class Heroes, a rap rock band from New York spearheaded by rapper Travis McCoy as the lead vocalist. In the mid-2000s, they were first discovered by the rock band Fall Out Boy and signed to an indie label called Decadence Records, which was owned and operated by two of its members, Pete Wentz and Patrick Stump. In 2005, the group released their second album, The Papercut Chronicles. On the album was a track called Cupid's Chokehold featuring Patrick Stump. At the time, the song hadn't become a hit yet, but it would show some potential as some stations were playing it non-stop. The group would then sign to Atlantic Records and drop their third album, As Cruel as School Children, in July 2006. It debuted at number 93 on the Billboard 200. Cupid's Chokehold will be re-recorded and included on this album, and was also chosen as the third single along with a new music video. By the first quarter of 2007, the song ended up becoming a super smash hit single, reaching number 4 on the Hot 100 and was a massive hit worldwide. This would help boost the album sales for As Cruel as School Children and rose back up the charts, peaking at number 35 on the Billboard 200 and eventually went gold. In 2008, the group would then drop their fourth album, The Quilt. It debuted at number 14 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 32,000 copies. One of the singles, Cookie Jar featuring The Dream, reached number 59 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got Webby. In 2008, Webby would have the biggest year of his career. In February, he dropped his second album, Savage Life 2, a sequel to his debut album. It debuted at number 4 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 72,000 copies, making it his highest charting album. The lead single, INDEPENDENT, do you know what that means then? Featuring Lil Fat and Lil Boosie, reached number 9 on the Hot 100, making it his biggest song. Next up, we got Daddy Yankee. In 2007, he dropped his fourth album, El Cartel The Big Boss. It debuted at number 9 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 82,000 copies, which was the original record for highest first week sales of a reggaeton album. The lead single, Impacto, reached number 56 on the Hot 100. The song also had a remix version with Fergie on it. In 2008, Daddy Yankee would branch off into making movies. He produced his first ever film called Talento de Barrio, which in English means Hood Talent. The movie was released in August 2008. And back on the music side, Daddy Yankee would also release a soundtrack to the movie which shared the same title. It debuted at number 13 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 26,000 copies. Next up, we got Bun B. Coinciding with UGK's big resurgence, Bun B also dropped his second solo album, 2 Trill, in 2008. It debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 98,000 copies, making it his highest charting album. Next up, we got Birdman. In 2007, he dropped his third solo album, 5 Star Stunner. It debuted at number 18 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 80,000 copies. The lead single, Pop Bottles featuring Lil Wayne, reached number 38 on the Hot 100. In 2009, he would drop his next album, Priceless. It debuted at number 33 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 34,000 copies. The lead single, Always Strapped featuring Lil Wayne, reached number 54 on the Hot 100. The third single, Money to Blow featuring Drake and Lil Wayne, reached number 26 on the Hot 100. Next up, we got New Boys. This duo from the West Side that consists of Ben J and Legacy would bring something different to the game in the late 2000s. After promoting themselves on MySpace, they would get discovered and signed a deal with Warner Brothers. In April 2009, they dropped their debut single, You're a Jerk, which was self-produced by one of their members. The song was an instant success, reaching number 24 on the Hot 100. The song also came with a popular new dance called Jerking. A few months after this, they would follow up with another single called Tie Me Down featuring Ray J, which would also become a hit, reaching number 22 on the Hot 100. A month later, their debut album, Skinny Jeans and a Mic, was released, which debuted at number 56 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 10,000 copies. And to wrap up the C-list, we got Huey, who had passed away a few years ago due to gun violence. Rest in peace to him as well. By the time he got signed in 2006 by Jive Records, Huey already had a couple tracks that received local popularity in his home state of Missouri, one of them being Pop, Lock, and Drop It, which had been commercially released in September 2006 after signing his deal. The song was a sleeper at first among the American public, but would then start bubbling up the charts and became a certified banger by the summer of 2007, reaching number 6 on the Hot 100. This was then followed up by the release of his debut album, Notebook Paper, in June 2007. It debuted at number 26 on the Billboard 200 with first week sales of 29,000 copies. And last but not least, we got the D-list. Gorilla Zoe, David Banner, LL Cool J, Gucci Mane, Talib Kweli, Kanon, Lil Boosie, Jim Jones, Two Pistols, Busta Rhymes, Cameron, Swizz Beatz, Young Buck, Chingy, Slim Thug, Paul Wall, VIC, Cassidy, Trina, Dero, Lil Flip, Mike Jones, Chamillionaire, Scarface, Ice Cube, Elephant Man, Raekwon, Method Man and Redman, Wu-Tang Clan, Insane Clown Posse, Juvenile, DJ Drama, Tech 9, Sean Paul, Jadakiss, Wale, Clips, The Roots, Eve, Ace Hood, Trick Daddy, Crime Mob, GS Boys, Hot Styles, Twista, Beastie Boys, Missy Elliott, Dala, Mano, Shawty Low, Rocco, Players Circle, Fast Life Youngsters, Swayze, and Nicki Minaj. Also, a fun fact about this video project took me 7 months to make. It took a long time, and over the course of making and editing this video, I have seen a few more rappers that I have mentioned in this era. Just recently, back in May, I've seen Ice Cube, along with Exhibit, and I've seen Nas the second time a few months later this past summer. Oh, and I almost forgot, I also seen Lil Jon the same day that I saw Nas. But anyways, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. I hope you guys have enjoyed walking down memory lane with me. And for the youngins who weren't old enough to witness this era and simply just want to do their research, I appreciate you for watching this as well. But anyways, appreciate you guys for watching. Like, comment, share, and subscribe. Music, travel, gaming, sports, random content, all in one. Peace, y'all, and I'm out.
DJ 91